Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for May 9th, right? I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Brent Walgamont. How you doing, Brent?
I'm good. I'm checking to see if it's May 9th. It is indeed. You were like May 9th, and I'm like, you're asking me? I don't know, Taran.
Usually the title of my notes is the date, but this time the update is a little different, as you probably know if you listened yesterday. The title of my notes today is Paris's Big Brother Canada 6 game, so didn't have the date in front of me. We are here with a very special edition of the Big Brother live feed update. We are going to go over one of the final three, Paris. We're going to go over Paris's game over the course of this season on Big Brother Canada 6 from the very start to the very potential end. And I've got Brent with me here to do it. Very excited to talk about Paris here, Brent.
Very excited to talk about Paris as well. I have been a fan of hers from the very beginning, and I am psyched to see that I didn't screw it up when I picked her first in the draft, Taran.
I will say, I think that Paris, I mean, man, my notes for Paris are like double the length of the notes for Derek. I think that Paris is going to be the most difficult person to construct a full narrative of like where she was during the game. And you'd think she'd be the easiest because she talked to the camera so much. She told us what her thoughts were. But if anything, I think that makes it more difficult because I think if anybody told their thoughts to the camera, we'd have a harder time like figuring out where their head was because people's thoughts are all over the place, and Paris's thoughts were all over the place. And so add to that, we have so much more information than usual. Add to that Paris was on top of that a pretty erratic player who waffled back and forth between decisions quite a bit, and we're gonna do our best to get a through line here for Paris's game. There's definitely a lot of great stuff. There's also a lot of weird stuff. There's also a lot of bad stuff. And we're gonna try and cover it all.
I thought it was very interesting going back into my notes and looking at some of the previous recaps where it's just constant titles of, Johnny campaigns to Paris. Paris continues thinking. Paris changes her mind. Paris changes her mind again. Things like I have question marks like, do I even care about this anymore? Ask me on Thursday. None of this matters, I understand what you're thinking there, but I am really psyched to see that she's here. I went back and listened to what I said preseason about her, and most of the stuff holds true. She's a fan of the show. She knew what she wanted to do coming in. She didn't want a showmance, even though I think her heart started to pull her toward a showmance. Maybe it obviously fate had something else in mind with Jesse being evicted out of nowhere during week 3, I think. So I think that maybe that saved her game. I didn't like how her game was starting to look under a Jesse and Paris sort of look. I wanted to see what it looked like just under a Paris sort of look, and I like what I see. Just so you guys know, I know there are many people out there who are not fans of Paris. I think that she probably has the most haters of the final three. I think people really like Kayla, and I think people are sort of indifferent when it comes to Derek. But Paris is the person who probably engenders the most hate from people. She has a lot of fans. I'm one of her fans. Now, I did get frustrated, as I noted last night during week 5. I'm sorry, during the final 5, because she was horrible to Maddie. But overall, I'm very pleased with her game, and I can't wait to talk about it.
I do think it's possible that Paris might be the casual fan favorite. I think that they've done a lot of work to make Kayla the villain, and Paris has been, I think Paris is basically the only remaining person that they've given consistent content to, that they haven't made a villain on the show. So I think there's a decent chance that she is the sort of TV only watcher. That's the person they're rooting for going into the finals.
Yep, I think that's a fair case because, as you said, they've done a admirable job making Kayla somewhat of a villain, and Derek never gets any TV time. So I was stunned by that stat from last night that Hamza still has more diary rooms than Derek. That's boggling to me.
And there was more ratings information that came out during the roundtable last night, that the ratings have really severely dropped, continued to severely drop for the triple eviction week. they're doing something wrong here toward the end stretch of the season, unfortunately. But we'll talk more about that on the finale recap and the season as a whole recap. Let's get into Paris's game. As you mentioned, going into the game, she did want to get in with the cool kids, but also be able to align with the not cool kids. I think she kind of does this in week 1, with the real deal being the cool kids and Will and Maddie sort of being the more nerdy people, the not as cool kids. I think this is sort of how she wanted to set up her game. She's put in hell by Andrew. She comes in second in that endurance competition to Johnny. She fails to make a deal with him to talk him down or to let herself come down, but she's not in danger anyway. This is all stuff that we didn't see on the feeds, so we don't know how this happened necessarily, but we know that it did happen. She gets into a showmance kind of thing with Jesse.
Kind of.
Right. Yeah. She forms the real deal and the trio of her, Will, and Maddie. She focuses on playing dumb and making sure that everyone thinks that she's a big old dummy. And meanwhile, Johnny's going to nominate Allie and Rosina. Johnny's going to win the veto. He's not going to use it, and Rosina's going to go home. Paris is going to vote for Rosina, and that's basically the highlights of what we know happened in week 1, but we don't again know exactly why.
Right. I wanted to just share with you really quickly what I had said about not just Paris, but the women on Big Brother Canada. So I'm going to play this for you just really quickly.
So Derek will win the final 4 HOH.
Oh, wait, that's not the right one. I'm sorry. I wanted to do this one. No. Not that one. Not that one. Okay, so this is the draft. You asked me who I'm going to pick number 1, and this is my answer.
Let me just say, before I announce who I'm going to pick, that this is the first season, and I don't know if you two agree with me because I didn't talk to you about this before the show, but this is the first season in a long time where the women are a lot more interesting to me than the men. Some of the men, in fact, a lot of the men, I felt like were duds.
Yes, and I am so psyched that held true because I felt that coming into this season that the women were going to carry the day, and some of the men were lacking a little bit of juice. And Taran, I think I called that. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but like Paris and Kayla and Erica and, to a lesser extent, Maddie, Veronica, like, even though, she was a gate crasher at the time, but my goodness, the women really brought it this season. And, we have like Will and Derek, carrying the torch for the men at the end. Like, girl, please, it was really nice to see a female-driven season, which is why I really want to see a female winner at the end in either Paris or Kayla. But specifically speaking about Paris's HOH or her first week, being put in hell must have been. And we didn't get to see this on the feeds, unfortunately. It must have been terrible for her because she's such a fan of the show. And then to basically have a 1 out of 6 chance of going home. And I can't imagine what that must have been like. But for her to get out of that, she did a great job of making herself seem like she wasn't very important for the house. She basically wasn't someone to be taken seriously. And I feel like that maybe sometimes people can run into roadblocks during week 1 or week 2 with that kind of an attitude, because if people aren't sure who to put up, then they could just put up the person that seems expendable. And maybe she did seem expendable, but I agree with what you said about her, the fact that she was able to straddle the line between the cool kids and the not so cool kids with her real deal alliance and also her trio alliance. That we call that preseason. She said she was going to be able to do that, and she did it. So I was psyched to see that.
Yes. And so I do think that these first 2 weeks are Paris's most successful weeks in the house in terms of doing what she aims to do, in terms of like actually having influence and having connections in the house. Once the Jesse week comes, we'll talk about it. She goes more into defensive mode, into survival mode, and that changes up her game. But for the time being, she is in a good position. She is well connected. She's just off center of the power, which is basically exactly where you want to be. We were talking about Paris right now as potentially the best player in the house, even though she still had a lot of detractors even back then. So week 2.
Yeah, I was buying Paris stock like crazy at one point. I was like, this is the winner of the season. I'm so psyched. She's doing exactly what I want her to do. And my favorite part is the Jesse week, because it's basically like the Big Brother game itself looked at Paris, what she was doing during the Jesse week. And it's that old Mariah Carey gif on Twitter of, I don't know her. Like,
Yeah, we were so complimentary of Paris in those first couple of weeks that Rob thought I had a crush on her. That's how
One night in
complimentary we were.
Paris. Yes, I know. I
Yeah.
remember.
That was good. All right. So week 2, the gate crashers enter the house. Ryan wins the HOH. And during this HOH competition, Paris is labeled the dumbest person in the house. And we see her celebrate over this fact. She loves it. It's a good thing that she loves it because despite the fact that she's in a good position, this being labeled the dumbest person in the house is truly the thing that's going to end up working in her benefit when everything else falls apart. So this is very important to Paris's narrative that she is able to play this dumb card extremely well, and then pretend that she's upset about it, but very secretly being very happy about it.
See, if the house guests were smarter, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I honestly, I'm pulling this from memory. I have notes, but I'm pulling this from memory. Didn't Paris pour a drink on herself for a bad thing at one point, or was that Maddie, or was it both of them? Do you happen to remember? Maybe the chat room can tell us. Yeah, I want to say that she did. I want to say that she threw a drink on herself because she realized what everybody was thinking. And if they have a little bit, like if I saw that, I would be like, okay, well, she at least has awareness that she's like this. So is this an act? Is this not something to be taken seriously? And also, even if she didn't do that, my ears would perk up about the fact that she seemed a little bit like faux butthurt about it. Like it never seemed real to me that she was like actually upset about this. And I felt like maybe some of the better players could sniff that out.
Yeah, and we'll talk about, she basically does get caught very quickly with a lot of people in terms of being more dangerous than she seems. So like in terms of the overall house perception, I don't think she succeeds long term with this strategy, but what she's able to do often is get in with the right person. That person was often Erica, and convince them that she's not a threat to them. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So Ryan,
as we do when I'm on the podcast.
Yes. Ryan is HOH. We talked about it yesterday with Derek. He has individual conversations with each person. When Ryan talks to Paris, Paris tells him that his backdoor target, because that's what he's asking for, should be Liv, Allie, or Erica. And Erica would be her main target. And funny enough, like these are basically going to be her targets for the rest of the season. Allie and Liv, in the same way that Derek sort of has this rivalry between Ryan and Johnny throughout the season, Paris is going to have a rivalry with Allie and Liv for the most part throughout the entire season until they're finally out of the house. And it starts all the way back to week 2. It was the first time we saw anything of it when she's talking to Ryan here. Ryan ends up spreading this information. He talks about what Paris told him, and already this is going to start to come back to Paris. That people are starting to get a little worried about Paris, and it's a little bit Ryan's fault because Kayla starts hearing about something that Paris said. She stops trusting Paris for the time being. She thinks she's too connected to Will. She seems to be everywhere. Kayla talks about cutting Paris as soon as possible. And meanwhile, Ryan is going to nominate Andrew and Hamza, and he's going to go totally nuts.
Right. This week was the week that I felt like, and of course we didn't get to see much the first week, but this week was the week that I was like, oh my God, we got a game here, because Ryan was an insane HOH. And I never really understood where this animosity with Olivia and Allie started with Paris, because this is where she starts, spreading lies about Allie and Olivia, specifically targeting Kayla. And she starts talking to Kayla saying, hey, that they might want you out, and then she's talking to other people trying to target Allie and Olivia. And some people said that it was the boy, that it was Jesse, that it was the fact that Olivia was into Jesse, and that's why Paris felt threatened by her. And that may be the truth. I don't really have a lot of context to be able to call that. I don't know if you have any opinions on that, but
I've got copious notes here.
Okay, fabulous. I mean, I really feel like more than anything that it's a bit of a shame. I also am laughing about the fact that it was considered a big deal back in week 2 to backdoor Olivia. Like, you know, I mean, I know that I fell in love with her, but Ryan like was saying like, you know, who, if I could backdoor someone, who would you want to backdoor? You know, I mean, this is his whole plan. You know, he really wanted to get rid of her. And I mean, just looking back on it, it's sort of funny, but whatever. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. So at this point, Kayla has stopped trusting Paris. Kayla is out on Paris. She talks to Derek about, I want Paris gone. Then the feeds go down. We have the veto competition. And again, a lot happens while the feeds are down during this period of time. Erica wins the veto. When the feeds come back up, the 7 is formed, this alliance of 7, and it's formed without Paris. And this is because Kayla no longer trusts Paris. Kayla has chosen Olivia and Erica and Allie over the Paris and Will and Maddie group. So with this alliance of 7, Olivia and Erica are now talking about wanting Maddie and Paris out as well. Paris is in kind of like social hot water here. Of course, not any real danger yet, but people are the social positioning that she was in before has really deteriorated. You can blame a lot of that on Ryan and then ultimately Kayla not trusting her. But Paris is going to work to try and correct that. This is when Liv asks Paris, should I pursue Jesse? Is that I'm kind of feeling Jesse. Should I go for that? And Paris says, yeah, to do it. Go. Yeah, totally.
Lies and damn lies. Go ahead. Sorry.
Immediately after Paris says that, she runs to Will and Maddie. She says, "We have to target Olivia. We have to target Olivia and Erica, but definitely target Olivia." And they're like, "Wait, why would we target Olivia? We're going after Dayla and Jesse are way more dangerous. We'd rather go after them because again, while the feeds were down, something happened. Will is no longer trusting Dayla. Maddie wants to go after them." But Paris is trying to push for targeting Olivia. So obviously, you know, this is where it starts. Paris had already talked about targeting Olivia and Allie and Erica, but Erica had been her main target. Now Olivia is her main target, and it comes from this conversation where Olivia asks Paris if she should go after Jesse. I don't know if Paris legitimately thought that like that was a loaded question. I don't know if it was a loaded question or if it was genuine. Who knows? But it all starts here.
Well, by the way, I just clicked something on this new computer, and I think maybe it had like something checked. So if I suddenly go away, I'll come back in a second. Okay. But just tap dance until then. Yeah, this is honestly where it starts, and I honestly do believe, knowing Olivia now, that she was being like legit with Paris there. I think she was being legit. Like, you know, hey, like, is this okay? Like if you don't want me to do it, like I won't. But you know, not much seems to be happening with you guys, and I kind of like Jesse. He's kind of cute. So, I mean, would you mind me, you know, taking a shot? And Paris is, I think, her antennas go up here, and she's like, you know what, she must be targeting me. She must want me out, or if at least I'm going to spread that rumor about her and say we have to get rid of her at this moment because she's coming for me, or coming for my allies, or coming for people that I supposedly care about. And it was a bit of a bummer because although my Olivia love wasn't yet fully in full bloom at the time, I wish these two girls could have worked together, because two women could have worked together, because they're two kick-ass chicks, and it would have been fun to see. But then they can never get on the same page.
Yes. Well, this ends up benefiting Paris because in her haste to put a target on Olivia, she goes to Kayla, who is not trusting her right now, has formed an alliance without her. I don't think Paris knows about this, but because she wants to throw shade on Olivia, when she goes to Kayla, she says, we need to target Olivia. I think she's jealous of me and Jesse. When Kayla doesn't bite on that reasoning, she goes, well, also, they've been talking about targeting you. And this is what we talked about yesterday when, basically Will and Maddie had been saying they wanted to target Dayla, and Paris was trying to deflect that from Will and Maddie. She says, I've been trying to protect you guys. People like Allie and Liv, like they've been talking about you. She says it's Allie and Liv instead of Will and Maddie. And in this moment, Kayla believes her. Kayla is like, "Oh my God, thank you for telling me this. This is huge news. Thank God we have you." She goes and talks to Derek, and she's like, "Thank God we have Paris. We got to be all in on the real deal."
Yeah, this is the point in time where we were nervousing on the roundtable about how many balls Paris has in the air at the moment, because she was just making up stuff out of whole cloth and she was convincing to people. But we were thinking, well, if these people end up talking or comparing notes like we wanted people to do all season during Big Brother 19, and these people seemed a lot smarter, then they're going to find out that she's lying and that she's throwing some people under the bus. I do remember when, I mean, and I'm not even sure Kayla and Derek really know this. I mean, I know they think it was that she was protecting them from Allie and Liv, but I'm sure they never really had an inkling how much Will and Maddie were specifically wanting Derek and Kayla out of the house, even as far back as like week 2, week 3. You know what I mean? She did deflect some blame from Dela at that point. And I always thought, well, is that in your best interest long term? Because I always felt like I felt like she was naturally more with the trio rather than, Dela. But because I always felt like the thing with her and Jesse was just kind of not really there. Also, let me just take it aside for a moment. It also was very evident by this point, too, from just a practical perspective, as watching her on the feeds, that she seemed unwilling to pursue anything with Jesse during this time because of either family watching at home or, religious considerations or cultural considerations. And she talked about that a few times. And then also she never even really mentions her parents on the live feeds, which is odd. Like you saw her HOH package recently during the Final Four, and it was like her best friend or something. So I don't know what was going on there, but I know that there was something. I felt like there was something holding her back, and that was disappointing to see. But overall, I did enjoy Paris during this week because anytime you have somebody playing hard, and she was playing hard at this time, it's a lot more fun for me to see than somebody like, no offense, but Maddie, who I had all the hopes for in the world, who really was a disappointment for most of her time in the house. And I know that's terrible to say, but it's true.
Yeah, and I think this is ultimately Paris's best week in terms of just like what she's capable of doing. It reminds me a little bit of Vanessa in her early on, when she breaks up the big Monolith alliance by getting in with Shelley and flipping Shelley and Clay against and turning them on each other. The difference here is that Vanessa knew about the alliance and knew what she was doing, whereas Paris was unaware of this 7-person alliance. Her main goal was to just get Kayla to target Liv. But in the process of doing this, she ends up having the same end result, which is turning this alliance of 7 against each other and winning Kayla and Derek over to her side. The real deal is back in full force. She has Veronica and Hamza are feeling good about her. Her social games are working there. However, there are some flaws too. Obviously we're going to talk about it next week, that this Allie and Liv versus Kayla thing ends up getting turned around on her. Erica is worried about Paris. Erica wants the trio to maybe be a target. She's worried about the White Room. Marin is somebody that calls Paris out exactly. Paris is in good with everyone. I think she's playing both sides. He tells this to Ryan. Luckily, though, Ryan doesn't believe it. Ryan, and this is going to be another through line for Paris's game. Her relationship with Ryan is a very good one, despite the fact that he really threw her under the bus earlier in the week. He believes that Paris is on his side. He's going to continue to believe that all season long. I bet he still believes in that jury house, that Paris would never betray him.
This is I just want to say that this is indicative of Paris's game overall, because as you noted, she didn't know about the alliance of 7, and she does certain things that result in her being in a better position at the end of the week than they were at the beginning of the week. But it really, it was sort of like she happenstance walked into it. It wasn't really like she intended on doing that. And then she thinks that she did it. There are so many times during the season where she does and then she sort of maybe gets to her desired result, but it was through no doing of her own whatsoever, or total happenstance. And she looks at the cameras and goes, "Abracadabra!" Look what I did, And I think this is the start of it.
Yeah, well, I do think this is the closest she probably came to actually being the direct result of, or the direct cause of the result that she was hoping for.
I think she was the cause of it.
Yeah.
It's just that it didn't happen the way she probably thinks it did.
Yeah, exactly. We also have Maddie and Will were concerned, and this is when we were talking about this. Maddie and Will brought up they thought, is she operating purely on jealousy? We're concerned about that.
Oh my God. Yes. This is the start of their dysfunction. This right here, this week, this freaking trio, man, I don't know how they made it to Final Five. If you'd have told me back in week 2, week 3, we're in week 2, that the trio would make it to the Final Five intact, I'd have told you you're freaking nuts, because these people could not work together. They just couldn't, even though they're a threesome and they seem to have the general sense of, we're all together, and they genuinely seem to like each other. I always felt that they had more natural chemistry than Kayla and Derek had. You know what I mean? Just from a pure personable perspective, but they could not get on the same page. They could not work together to achieve their goals, and they couldn't win a damn thing, as we'll talk about later on.
Yes. Ali and Liv are also people who are going to be sketched out in particular by Paris. Like I said, this is going to be a rivalry that will last the entire season. Paris is going to talk to the cameras toward the end of the week. She says, "I want to protect my allies, so I need to win HOH." She's going to say that she needs to win HOH about every single week. And
what does June Song say? June Song on the Taran show a few weeks ago, and then on Twitter, she said, if you are saying I have to win this HOH, you're playing the damn game wrong. Paris didn't need to win HOH during this time. She just needed to play a better game, Taran.
Yeah, and that's like she says to the cameras all the time that she needs to win the HOH, that she wants to win the HOH. And then after the HOH is over, she's like, I threw that one, but I need to stop throwing now and I need to win the HOH. So who knows whether or not what she was doing there. But she wants to win the HOH. She feels like she needs to. She doesn't want to go home because Olivia is jealous of her. That would be the worst.
That would be the worst. I remember this time. I said it on the show. Paris is like, I don't care what happens, but I ain't going home over that girl. If I go home in 5th place, she damn well better sure go home in 4th place. I don't care if I lose Big Brother, but it's not going to be because of Olivia being jealous of me and a showman's.
Yes. So at this point, she's gotten the 7 to turn on each other. She's gotten most of the people in the 7 to turn on Ali and Liv. Most people in the house are willing to put up Ali and Olivia if they win HOH. Olivia is the main target. She has done very well here to get what she wants, which is get Olivia out of the house. However, Johnny finds out, and Johnny doesn't like this. This is when Johnny starts to wake up a little. And, again, this is when Dayla's game starts to crumble, their power structure. This is also when Paris's power structure starts to crumble. It's, again, the 3 pillars of the house. I love that they all made it toward the end of the game. I think they continually put each other in check. Johnny starts to wake up. He's like, wait a minute. Why are we targeting Ali and Liv? I don't think we should be targeting Ali and Liv. Are you guys going after Dayla? What's going on here? He gives them the heads up, which actually pisses off Ali, and Ali is genuinely after Dayla at this point. But that's how we head into the next HOH competition. Andrew is evicted unanimously, and then Hamza wins the HOH, which is not the result that Paris was hoping for.
Yeah, and boy, this was crazy too, because this was the pairs HOH week where they had to decide who was, it gets down to a pair and then they have to decide. And Veronica could have been HOH. And I think maybe Paris could have gotten her way with Veronica, but instead Veronica gives it to Hamza, and no telling what's going to happen when Hamza's in charge, honey.
Yes. So Hamza's initial target is Dayla. And Paris is going to... I'm going to say she was distracted this week. She spent a lot of time, and part of it's not even her fault. We'll talk about, she gets handcuffed to Jesse for an entire day, which did not help her cause.
Whoa.
But Hamza's initial target is Dayla, and Paris spends a lot of time talking to Jesse. This is when their showmance kind of blossoms. They spend a lot of time together talking about their showmance, talking about showmance names. They're going to hook up this week. She spends a lot of time focused on Jesse. Meanwhile, there's a lot of stuff happening that she's not as on top of as she was the previous week.
Yeah, because she's on top of Jesse.
Yes. Ryan lets Paris know because, again, Paris, her head wasn't entirely in the game, or at least at the very least, she was focused on other things. Ryan lets her know, okay, the plan is Kayla and Liv are the nominations. And Paris is like, wait a minute, Kayla, it's supposed to be Allie and Liv. I don't like this at all. And he doesn't let her know that Kayla would be the real target there, and there's a possibility that they backdoor Derek. But she's still not happy. She's like, I don't even like Kayla up there as a pawn. I want Allie up there as a pawn. And she gets pissed at Ryan. She feels like Ryan is the cause of this, and she's going to and like Ryan is just like, Ryan still likes Paris. He's trying to share as much information as he can with her, but she doesn't like this. She's going to tell Dayla that Ryan is trying to get you guys up on the block. This is all Ryan's doing. We need to stop Ryan. And as we mentioned yesterday, that is sort of the nail in the coffin in Ryan and Dayla's relationship. They will be at each other's throats for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't understand Paris, and I never understood her at the time. This was purely shoot the messenger. That's all Paris was doing here. She seemed a little butthurt about the fact that she wasn't getting her way. I think she thought for sure it was going to be Allie and Olivia on the block. Then you have somebody unpredictable like Hamza in charge, and maybe he's going to put, one of your targets up on the block, but also somebody that he wants. She's a little mad about it. Then she, has somebody who's being authentic with her and said, hey, just want to give you a heads up. This is what's going to be happening. She's, doing other things, otherwise engaged, acts, Kel Surprise, you're not getting your way because you're not on top of things. And I felt like this was the beginning of the end of Paris's first game.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And this is when she gets handcuffed to Jesse, and she's going to spend the entire day with Jesse, speaking very little game. In the meantime, Derek is going to be schmoozing Hamza at Wendy's. Hamza is not going to want to target Dayla anymore, so instead, the target gets shifted to Jesse. Paris is unaware of this. Paris will then, toward the end of the day, once things are kind of set, she's going to try and convince Hamza to stick with the plan and put up Olivia and Allie, not even realizing that the plan has shifted to now Jesse is up on the block. And Hamza, it's not going to work. She doesn't take the right tactic with Hamza, and Hamza ends up putting Jesse and Olivia on the block. And Paris is going to be surprised, and she's going to think, okay, wow, they're taking a shot at Jesse. Wow. She talks to the camera. She goes, it's your fault, Jesse. This is your fault. I'm not sticking my neck out for you. I'm going to let you go home. At that point, we were like, okay, wow, interesting. Paris is willing to let Jesse go home. But as we see with Paris, that's actually not what she's going to do over the course of the week.
Right. Honestly, if I could encapsulate Paris's week in a cartoon form, it would be like the game is the Roadrunner and Paris is Wile E. Coyote trying to catch up with it. Like, she was constantly trying to catch up with what was happening in the game throughout this entire week. And by the time she realized what was happening, it was really too late to do anything. And she looked to the cameras and was like giving us G. Otis kind of stuff where, Jesse, if you're going home, I ain't gonna stick my neck out for you. I'm not gonna lose $100,000 over some boy I just met a couple weeks ago. And she gives us that, and we're like, yes, queen, yes, that's what we want. That's what we want. Please give us that. But she just cannot help herself. This entire end of the week, it's like every conversation begins, Taran, with, so, I know Jesse's going home, but, have you considered maybe that we could do this instead? And, what if this? Because, I know he's going home, but, I don't know how many times I had to hear this to the point where I'm now second guessing, like picking her first in the draft. And I don't mean to belabor the draft, but I was like, is she not the player that I thought she was? Because this is obviously a losing proposition for her. She's exposing herself. And at the same time, she's not going to accomplish what she's trying to accomplish because she doesn't understand the mechanics or the logistics of what's happening in that Will, one of her closest allies, is one of the main causes of Jesse going home. And she doesn't seem to see that until it's far too late and far too much into her own campaigning for Jesse.
Yes, she spends a lot of time despite what she says to the cameras, she says spends a lot of time trying to save Jesse. She coaches him up on what he needs to say. She tries to talk to Veronica, to Maddie. She tries to campaign to Hamza. She tries with Johnny, but none of it's working. She makes some headway with people like Veronica and Maddie, but Johnny is usually there and usually undoes any work that she does after she leaves. It's just she's not getting anywhere. And again, in the meantime, while she is focused on this, Kayla is focused on rebuilding her game. She's already cut Jesse from the picture. She goes to Allie and Liv, and Paris's work the previous week is being undone here, where they're saying, "Wait a minute, we were never after you. Were you after us?" And they were like, "No. Somebody has been trying to pit us against each other." Luckily for Paris, Kayla decides to protect her here. I'm still not sure why. I'm still not sure if she did it on purpose, but Kayla does not reveal that Paris was the source of information that said that Allie and Olivia were coming after her. Maybe she saw Paris as a beneficial piece in the game that she didn't want to burn yet. But ultimately the blame lies on Maddie, because Allie and Liv think that Maddie was more likely to do it. They put Maddie's name out there, and Kayla is happy to say, "Oh yeah, Maddie. It's all Maddie's fault." But
sorry, I just want to say real quick. I think honestly, if I could just peek into Kayla's head at this point, first of all, Kayla was giving us G.Otis stuff because she was the one who was like, you know what? We're going to cut Jesse. We're not going to campaign for him. Derek, you're going to vote him out of the house. And that's that. I will say that I don't think that she threw Paris under the bus because she was already feeling a little bit isolated by the fact that it was a close call this week. They were almost nominated for eviction and they weren't. Hamza decided to go after Jesse instead. But one of their ride or dies was essentially being sent home in Jesse. She's not really sure if she can trust Paris, but she's better than a lot of the other snakes in the house. Basically, it's the devil you know. And so I think that's why she decided to protect Paris in this initial conversation with Allie and Olivia.
Yes, and there you go. And that's why Dela manages to hold on to power this week, manages to both survive and hold on to power, while Paris basically loses most of, if not all of her power in the game over the course of the week. Paris fighting a losing battle all the way until the end. When Will does finally tell her, like, no, this is me. I'm taking Jesse out. Paris is like, what? Why? And she tries to convince him and Maddie not to do it, but it just doesn't work.
Johnny's always there.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was never ever going to happen. I'm trying to think of the time where she got closest to doing it. I'm not even sure when that might have been. I think it's interesting. Starlet7 in the chat said Jesse put the glasses on and Paris got weak. That's definitely what happened. He put the glasses on, and not only did Paris get weak, but our own Melissa Denny did as well. It was tough to see him go home. I'm so thinking about that too, because we could have had Jesse in the house, who's just been so fun and lively and talkative, and he able to poke fun at himself and able to poke fun at other people in a fun way on Twitter and on social media and on shows, podcasts, whatever. But instead we got freaking Derek in the house. And I'm sure there are Derek fans out there and Derek's family maybe watching, whatever. But I like Jesse a lot more than Derek, and I'm like, that's the one thing I wish we could have had. But given the final three, I'm pretty freaking happy.
Yes. There's also going to be a party that happens this week where Paris is going to hook up with Jesse. Liv is going to splash water on Paris's face. This is only going to further fuel the fire of their rivalry. And really, she's just, again, there's tons of pages of notes of Paris trying to campaign for Jesse to stay and nothing working. And meanwhile, Dela continues to consolidate power. They officially come together with Allie, Liv, and Erica for an alliance. They also create Five's company. Paris is getting left out of all of this, including Will, who is involved with Five's company, leaving Paris out of this. Will is now, sort of getting closer to Veronica. Paris has basically lost her entire power base. She only has Maddie left. And people are starting to notice as well. People are noticing that Paris is campaigning. They saw her hook up with Jesse. They're now convinced that she has a showmance with Jesse. That adds to the list of why Jesse needs to go, that Paris has Jesse and that they want Jesse out because of that. But despite all of the campaigning, Jesse is in fact evicted from the house, and Paris votes for him to go because she knows it's a losing cause.
Yeah, at least she votes for him to go. But you know who doesn't vote for him to go?
Good old Veronica.
Good old Veronica coming in to save the day for Paris.
That really was huge for Paris because, as I mentioned, what little Paris did have was the trio, and with Veronica there, Will was being pulled away, and Veronica, making a target of herself was very, very big for her. So ultimately, we head into week 4. Erica wins the HOH, and she's on the hunt for the hinky vote. Paris is in the hot seat here. Will questions her. She gets mad. They get into an argument. This is going to happen a lot. I don't
happen a lot.
Somebody tweeted at me like, are you going to bring up every time that Paris threw Maddie under the bus, or that I was like, there's way too many.
I know, right? What, you want a 6-hour podcast? Like, please.
And it's the same thing with Paris and Will get into a childish argument. Like, it's too many times.
Yeah, because Will's a child. Anyway, go on.
Yes. So Veronica is this nice juicy target. It's eventually exposed. This is clearly Veronica's move to cast the hinky vote. And this is when Paris truly starts to turn around, right? So she was really, really bad the week before, but now she's by herself and she goes into full on, I called her the cockroach because she's so good at surviving, full on survival mode. She talks with Erica and she bonds with Erica. She says, you are one of the few people in this house that has been here for me that I feel like I can talk to. She holds she holds Erica's stuffed animal. She talks about like, oh, I'm up for anything you want to do. She throws Maddie under the bus. She throws Will under the bus. Erica talks about Veronica, and Paris is like, oh yeah, Veronica, she's the worst. I hate Veronica. We should get rid of Veronica. And she makes Erica feel good about her, and that's going to be very valuable considering the fact that Erica's basically going to be in power for a few weeks.
Right, exactly. I remember when she grabbed Erica's stuffed animal and held it, and it did seem to me like she was, I think maybe it was a little bit of fan fiction from the people on Twitter, but it felt like she was trying to really play into that naivete that, don't take me seriously. And basically she was a willing tool of Erica. She bonded with her, and she also was like, you know what, I'll do whatever you want. Whatever you need, I will do it. I got nobody in this house. Jesse's gone home, and whatever you need from me, I'm willing to do. This is the beginning of Paris's second game. I mean, the game that I have come to know and mostly love and appreciate is Jesse's out of the house. She's not in any potential showmance anymore, and it's just her and the trio against the house. And let's talk about it.
Yes. So Maddie and Marin go up on the block with Veronica as the backdoor target. Paris lets Maddie know, don't worry, Veronica is the target here. You don't have to worry. But Maddie's going to be mad anyway. Paris is going to talk to the cameras. And again, this is going to be a little bit contradictory to what she ends up doing. But she says, I want to be the third in every pair, and I want Veronica to go. I think that will be great for me. It will pull Will back to me. However, the very following day, she talks with Veronica and she changes her mind. She now wants Veronica to stay. She says she would prefer to keep Maddie over Veronica, but she wants the nominations to stay the same. She'd prefer to see Marin leave. But also what she'd really like to do is get Ryan out of the house because Ryan's the worst. This is Paris. Again, this is what we see this kind of thing from Paris almost every single week where she just she's in full survival mode. She does whatever she can to survive. And then once she survives, she's like, okay, now that I've survived, time to enact all of my crazy plans. And then none of them happen, but then she survives again.
This is like prima facie Paris. This is all I have written in my notes here is messy, all over the place. It's basically, again, I said this last night, I think about to somebody else. It's like a loaded gun in a room, and you're just like, you've got an itchy trigger finger. She didn't really know what she wanted to have happen this week. And she also had this thing where she would talk to people, and then like even the personal empathy or the personal bond that she would make with them in a 20-minute conversation would alter her overarching plans for what she wanted to have happen in her Big Brother game, which obviously is not a good tack to take because you can get pulled in many different directions. So I felt like but on the plus side, I felt like she was showing her true colors. Like, I think at the end of the day, Paris is a messy player. And she did say that she wanted to be the third in every pair. And she basically did that, even though I don't know, it's a very winding road to get there. But she basically is the third with Kayla and Derek as the real deal. She is the third with Will and Maddie, or maybe you can say Maddie's the third, but she's part of a threesome. There's a couple different threesomes that she got herself into that were either tenuous or really strong at different times throughout the game. And I like the beginnings of what I see here from Paris, but I just wish she could be a little bit, I remember thinking and talking about at the time, I wanted her to be a lot more streamlined in her thought process. Think about it and execute. And the problem with Paris is that she thinks about it and thinks about it and thinks about it, and then another 10 more times, and then maybe executes it, but by the time the rest of the house is already decided. And that's what her problems were this week.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how she, for the longest time this week, thinks that she controls the votes when she doesn't.
Yes, all about me. Yes. Oh my God.
So Paris is going to talk to Kayla and try to. They're going to BS each other. Kayla has essentially, like, this is when you're playing a video game and like you're using the same tactic against much stronger enemies who have evolved. Oh crap, these are way stronger than my previous enemies. Kayla now knows that Paris is full of BS, and so Kayla decides to feed Paris some BS, and this is going to be some very effective BS, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow when it comes to Kayla's game, about how Liv and Allie don't trust me. Liv and Allie are coming after me. You're totally right, Paris. While secretly she knows that she's working with them and knows that they're trying to BS her about that. She's going to play into that and let Paris think that Paris is manipulating her, and that's going to be their relationship for a long time.
Yeah, I know. This is the part of the time where Kayla was woke. She was totally woke to the fact that, you know what? You're lying. And I know you're lying, but I'm not going to tell you that you're lying because I want to keep you close. And that's what I love the most about Kayla's game at this point. But specifically about Paris, I was a little bummed because I felt like she should have been able to sniff this out, that maybe, you know what, this is, I don't know if this is really reality here. Like, are they really, because she should know that her lie about Allie and Olivia was just that, a lie. So for then Kayla to agree with it and say, yeah, I know that they're coming after me, she should have been able to determine that that was at least untrue. I know that there were times where Allie was a little annoyed with Kayla and Derek and was thinking about coming after them, but that wasn't for very long. And I really feel like Paris should have been able to see the real tea here.
I think that she saw success in that first week that she tried this tactic. And then so when she did the same thing and got what looked like the same result, she was like, oh, good, it's working again.
Yeah,
but
I'm brilliant.
But it wasn't. Yeah. Erica ends up winning the veto. She does follow through and backdoors Veronica. When I talk about stuff like this and I don't mention the involvement of the player, that means despite what Paris may tell you, she did not have much to do with this plan to backdoor Veronica. I think one of the reasons she's talked about this later in the season, that she feels like she did have something to do with it, was that when she was talking to Erica early on in the week, when Erica was already thinking of backdooring Veronica, and she brought up like, oh, how do you feel about Veronica? Because I kind of don't like her. Paris was like, oh yeah, Veronica sucks. So that makes Paris think, oh, I talked Erica into backdooring Veronica, when really that was Allie and Liv's plan. But this plan goes through. Veronica is backdoored.
Yeah, I don't think that when the cast comes out of the house, they're going to realize just how much power and why the fans love the ding dong so much, because this really was all Allie and Liv's doing. And Paris thinks, one flippant comment in a conversation with Erica makes me the person responsible for backdooring Veronica. This is the part where I started to get off the Paris train a little bit, because I did like her, but she's looking at the cameras going, I'm the decider this week. I'm going to, what I decide is going to have happen is what's going to happen. She even did it a little bit in the Jessie week as well, but I feel like she did it way more this week. And the fans at home know the reality, and we know that what she's telling us is not true, but of course we can't tell her that. So she just continues to pile on with I know I'm in charge. I'm the one who's deciding everything. I'm the one who may get Veronica backdoored. Whether or not she goes home is up to me. And it wasn't in concert with reality. And this happened a few more times throughout the season, where Paris thinks she did something and she really had nothing to do with it. And even the people that she was targeting, like if it wasn't going to be Veronica, like Ryan, were people who were potential allies of her.
Yes, but there is going to be something positive that comes out of this week, which is that Johnny starts talking to Paris more. Johnny is trying to figure out, how do I target Dela? He thought that he had a good alliance with Ali, Liv, and Erica, and that he could use that alliance to target Dela, but it's become clear to him that Erica is unwilling to take that shot. Ali and Liv are unwilling to take that shot, so he needs to outsource this. He needs to buy some weapons somewhere else, and he looks over toward Will, Maddie, and Paris. So he starts talking with Paris about potentially working together, potentially taking a shot at Dela. And Paris is all on board about this. She's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And he wants to bring her and Will into this alliance with Ali, Liv, and Erica. Of course, not telling her that this was already a formed alliance, but saying, let's all come together. Johnny wants a version of this alliance that is willing to go after Dela. He's trying to use Paris and Will, of course, not realizing at the time that they're incapable of winning competitions. So this is not going to work out well for him. But this is really big for Paris's game, that Johnny ends up siding essentially on her side of things over the Dela side of things.
Really amazing that we've been talking about Paris for, 50 minutes so far. And I really think this is the first time we've said Johnny's name outside of, week 1 and him being HOH. The thing is that Paris didn't talk to Johnny for the longest time. They really didn't have much of a relationship. And this is the first time that, many people who are fans of Johnny, and I was, at least I was a moderate fan of Johnny, and I was a really big fan of Paris. Seeing them come together was really a big deal for me. And I'm like, yes, finally working together. And at the time, I was psyched about the possibilities, and it sort of happened.
Yeah, we were very excited. I was very excited. I was like, oh, this is really getting me pumped up. But just they couldn't take down any competitions.
Yeah.
So and also, as we'll see, Paris is her wishy-washy self, and isn't going to be super into this at all times. But Paris is still reluctant to vote out Veronica. She doesn't really. She's worried about this alliance. She feels like they're just having this alliance to secure her vote. She wants reassurance. Right. From everyone else in the alliance. So Erica gathers in Ali and Olivia, and they all give her the assurances like, we're in this alliance, we're good, we'll keep you safe. Problem is, Kayla sees this. Kayla sees the gathering, and Kayla's like, "Wait a minute, Paris is my snake. I can't let her snake anyone else. I know Paris is lying, but other people might not know Paris is lying. I don't want Paris to bond with anyone else, and this is going to be a very bad thing for Paris's game. Kayla is going to go around, and she's got a hit out, a bounty out on Paris's reputation. So she's going to go to Ali and Liv and say, "Whoa, hey, guess what?" So guess what Paris has been saying about you, Liv? Not great stuff. Just in case anybody was maybe talking to her or thinking about aligning with her, these are some of the things that she's been saying about you. She also throws Paris under the bus to Erica, and she's going to be pretty successful at this. Ali and Liv in particular are going to be, they were starting to warm up to Paris, and now they're like, whoa, was Paris playing us? Oh, we don't like Paris at all. And it's going to moderately work with Erica. It's again, Paris takes one step forward and then 2 steps back. And it's, due to Kayla this time.
Right. She felt like she was being used in this alliance. And so she wanted reassurances from people. Then when she gets those reassurances, she takes 2 steps backward because Kayla decides to come in and basically throw down the truth, which is the reality of the situation. She was protecting Paris before. Now she's not going to protect her anymore. She's going to tell Olivia and Ali what's really happening behind the scenes, that it wasn't, Maddie all along, that it was Paris, that Paris was the one who was constantly coming between them, and they shouldn't let it happen again. Also, then Ali and Olivia really start to doubt Paris here, and I think she's been exposed for a player. She's, not a player. She's a player in the game. They know that she's capable of bald-faced lying to your face. You know what I mean? She's capable of telling a lie and not even feeling bad about it. A lot of people in the house, it's amazing to me. A lot of people go in the Big Brother house and they are not capable of lying to people, or they start to, really feel bad about it afterwards. I think that Paris was exposed here for the snake that she is.
Yes, and she is going to talk to the cameras and talked to some other people about how I'm so annoyed because I can't save Veronica because Veronica just sucks at this game too much and I can't save her. It's so annoying. And she's torn about the vote. Like, should I stick my neck out? Should I use my power to save Veronica because I control the vote this week? Or should I not do it? I want to go after Erica next week. Like, I want to do all these things. She eventually talks to Johnny, who's like, oh no, sorry, Veronica's leaving. It doesn't matter what you do. Believe me, I've tried. And Paris is like, oh, okay. And so from that point on, she mostly realizes that she doesn't control the vote, but she still has a little bit of like, well, maybe if I tried.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just because I'm not trying, but if I tried, I could probably do something.
Yeah. And at this point, Johnny does say, like, I want to work with you. Like, I do want, I want us to maintain this relationship. And I want to take that shot at Dela. But unfortunately for Paris, Erica, Liv, and Allie are basically talking about, like, let's potentially target Paris soon at this point because of Kayla's work. And Veronica is in fact evicted from the house. Paris is a vote to evict Veronica. But wait, that's not the end of the week because there's a double eviction. Olivia wins the HOH. She wants to target Maddie. And one of the reasons they want to target Maddie is because they don't like Paris. They don't like Maddie. They don't like that pairing. And they feel like Maddie is the more dangerous one. Again, because Kayla decided to choose Paris over Maddie. Paris had a better relationship with Kayla that has protected her and hurt her at the same time. But they want to target Maddie, but Johnny says no to Maddie. Johnny protects Maddie and says he doesn't want Maddie on the block. So Marin and Ryan end up going on the block. Ryan wins the veto, and Hamza ends up going up and out. And again, Paris, not much to do with any of the goings on during the double eviction, despite what she may say.
Yeah, I don't really remember my feelings at the time, but I do feel like that there was an opportunity for Paris to go home during the double eviction. I mean, with an Olivia win of an HOH, if Kayla decided to push it enough, I do feel like Paris could have ended up on the block. The fact that she didn't is, I guess, again, a testament to the devil you know. I mean, I know that Kayla didn't feel great about Paris and is actively throwing her under the bus to other people, but she's like, well, she doesn't know I'm on to her yet. So, let's keep this in my back pocket for now, and let's push other people to the forefront. So I feel like that's why maybe Maddie was going to be a potential nominee, but Maddie got lucky that Johnny just happened to be in the storeroom, because I don't know that everybody got in the storeroom at that point, but Johnny got into the storeroom and managed to exert his will on the nominations.
He pushed his way in there.
The game.
Yeah, he was like, oh, you let me in, you let me have a conversation, which is how you should operate a double eviction.
Thank you. Repeat that again, Taran. Thank you.
Yes, you do not ever let somebody tell you that you can't talk to them during a double eviction.
Exactly. For all those people out there who are going to play Big Brother in the future, like, if you are a fan of the show and you've tweeted me before and you end up on Big Brother, if you go onto a show and you just let people talk in the storage room while you know that they're talking about you, I don't know you. I don't know you. Don't come to me if you're evicted, because you need to get in there and fight and spill the tea and tell them what's really going on and fight for yourself. Honestly, just getting in people's faces and looking them in the eye is sometimes enough to make them, you know what, I'm not going to target you today. I'm going to target this person over here who's out on the couch. I just be more aggressive. And I was glad to see that Johnny was playing that hard.
Yes. So that leads us into week 5, where Erica is going to once again win the HOH. And once again, Maddie is going to be her initial target. At this point, again, we're going to see Paris, lots of repeats here. Paris is going to be very frustrated. She's going to talk to the cameras. She's going to be like, I need to start winning competitions. My allies are all leaving. Stupid Erica keeps winning. I want Erica gone. And Kayla, she's dead to me. Kayla's the worst. I hate that she keeps surviving and that Erica won't target Dela. It's so frustrating. She goes to Erica. She's like, would you please, why is everyone so scared of targeting Dela? We should be targeting Dela. That is going to prove to be a mistake because Erica is going to run that immediately back to Dela.
Right.
However, as we talked about with Derek, this is when Derek kind of comes back out with his social game. He's going to go back to to Paris and be like, hey, Paris, like, is everything cool? Like, instead of confronting, he soothes, and it does cool Paris down a little bit on the targeting Dela front. And that is going to be important in terms of like how wishy-washy Paris can be in terms of her targets. Give her any reason to not target you, and she'll think about it.
Yeah, this is a terrible analogy, but this is the moment in time where Paris reminded me of the current occupant of the White House, where, you know, like the last person who talks to her sometimes gets their way with her. She's that wishy-washy that, you know, just some seemingly innocuous conversation with Derek, and good on him for playing this way, is able to soothe some of the wounds that Paris feels in regards to Dela specifically and wanting to target them. So great job for him, and Paris, you're again showing your messiness in your game, the fact that you're all over the place with what you said you've done and with what you say you're trying to do.
Yes, and this just continues that rivalry between Derek and Johnny, where Johnny had Paris so amped to go up against Dela, but Derek does manage to cool it down, and there's less of a just like a drive for Paris to target Dela moving forward, mostly stemming from this conversation. Allie then will try to get Erica to target Paris. Allie wants Paris gone this week. Allie doesn't even want anyone else gone except for she's like, get Paris out of this house. But Erica does not want to do that. Erica still feels good enough about Paris, even though she's not nearly as high on her as she was because of Kayla's influence and all of that. She still isn't willing to go all the way and take Paris out of the house. She would rather have Maddie out of the house. And Johnny also tries to protect Paris because, again, he's trying to use Paris and Maddie to target Dela. However, he does say if it comes down to it, I would choose Maddie over Paris if we're going to go down that road. But none of that happens anyway, because ultimately Erica nominates Marin and Ryan, and Paris wants Marin out again. She's
right.
Her bond with Ryan has started to evolve, right? So like last week she was so frustrated with Ryan, but Ryan is going to campaign to her, and again, as you mentioned, when you talk to Paris, it's like the last person that talks to her, like she feels good about them. When Ryan campaigns to her, they have a long conversation. They really start to bond, and she promises him her vote. She says like, "All right, I'll vote to keep you. I want Marin gone." So that is going to be important again, because Ryan still likes Paris. Ryan has no idea that Paris has been frustrated with him for weeks, and this is the moment where they come back together, and this could be very, very important for Paris's end game.
It's so amazing. Yeah, because this is I obviously I don't watch the feeds 24/7. There's things I sleep. I got a life. This is a point in time where I'm like, people are like, well, Ryan and Paris are working together. Ryan really trusts Paris. Paris really trusts Ryan. I'm like, when did that happen? Like, when? I had to go catch up. I'm like, what happened here? And why does it seem like Ryan is like totally in her back pocket, or why does she feel like that? And you're right. It seemed to happen almost overnight. The one thing I will say about Paris specifically this week is that not only is she messy, but it didn't seem like she really had a lot of evidence behind who she wanted to be evicted. And I also think that she was a little bit misguided in trying to get Marin out of the house. I feel like he could have been a useful tool later on down the line for her specifically. I don't mean a tool, but just somebody she could potentially work with. I also would have to call Erica out a little bit on her nominees of Ryan and Marin. I'm sure she must be kicking herself going, you know what, I could have had a shot at Dela here. And I understood her move at the time. In fact, I supported it. We're basically removing a pawn from the board and trying to keep all the power players in play in order to try to lessen her own target. But ultimately, I mean, so maybe it's a little results oriented, but I really wish she would have targeted Dela here, because maybe her life looks a little bit different now, and she's still in the house. Taran.
Yeah, and I think, her argument was like, hey, look, it worked. If not for the twist, it would have worked, because they didn't target me the next week. But
that's true.
It's tough. Maybe if we do a season retrospective with Erica, we can discuss it more in detail. So Paris starts complaining now that because Allie is going to Paris, and she's saying right after Paris just bonded with Ryan, she wants to keep Ryan. Allie's like, no, we're voting Ryan out. And Paris is like, wait a minute, why are we doing this?
Right.
She gets into an argument with Allie. She eventually agrees, okay, fine, I'll vote Ryan out, but she's very frustrated by it. She feels like the alliance is not listening to her. She starts complaining that these people are not listening to her. That, again, Paris not very cautious with her information. This gets back to Johnny, and Johnny is going to have a talk with her as well. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is the point in time where I started to get off the Paris train. I started, you can only watch one camera at a time. You can do quad cam, but I hate quad cam. So I wanted to watch other people and not Paris. I want to watch Dela instead of Paris. I want to watch Erica. I loved watching Erica instead of Paris because Paris just whines so much. This is the beginning of the whining Paris, this whole, 3-week stretch where she's talking to the cameras, complaining about the fact that she doesn't have the influence to exert that she thought that she had, or that she did, X, Y, and Z when really she had nothing to do with it. It was very frustrating to watch her, and she started to lose me here. So, I can't say much positive stuff about her.
Well, so Johnny is going to have a talk with Paris. This is when we were talking about, like, Johnny does the same thing that Derek did, which was, I'm hearing that Paris is talking bad about us. So I'm going to go in and just kind of soothe her over, which works. He is again saying, like, don't worry. We're all on board. I want you guys in the final 6. He genuinely does want Maddie, Will, and Paris all in the final 6 with him, Liv, and Erica. That is the plan. And he wants to take that shot at Dela. Paris is like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's where I was before. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling better about this. Johnny wins the veto. He doesn't use it. Then there's some weird circumstances here. Paris is going to get mad at Maddie because somebody said that Paris was throwing competitions and she thought it was Derek, and it was Derek, but Will blames Maddie, and then Paris gets mad at Maddie, but Maddie didn't actually say it. And so now Paris is mad at Maddie, and she throws Maddie under the bus to Allie. And when she does that, then Allie's like, oh, yes, we do hate Maddie. Let's get Maddie out.
We hate Maddie. Maddie is the bane of our existence.
Exactly. So she's like, let's get Maddie out instead of Dela. We're going to save Dela for the triple eviction. And Paris is like, wait a minute. Wait, what? Well, saving Dela for the triple eviction? I don't like hearing that. And that reminds her of how much she hates Allie and Liv. So she goes and she talks to Ryan, who had just been instructed by Maddie to tell people that he needs to be targeting Dela because that's how to get him to stay in the house when it comes to Johnny and everything. And Ryan then says to Paris, yes, I'm targeting Dela. And Paris is like, wait a minute, Dela, though, why don't you target Allie and Liv? I'd rather you target Allie and Liv. It's a big mess. And there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of keeping Ryan in the house. Paris is actually not involved with a large majority of it. A lot of it has to do with Maddie and Johnny and Will. But ultimately, Paris does change her mind back over. She does want to keep Ryan in the house. This is also the week where Ryan tells Paris that Allie said to Olivia, I don't trust that B. And that was about Paris. Paris confronts Allie about it. Allie denies it. There's a big blow up. Paris briefly goes, okay, now I changed my mind again. I want Ryan gone. I can't believe he lied to me. But then she changes her mind back over and she says, oh, well, this doesn't mean that Ryan has to go home. She talks with Johnny and Johnny's like, yes, we're going to keep Ryan. Don't worry about it. They eventually decide and they make it happen. They keep Ryan. Marin is evicted. Paris votes to evict him. And that is our week.
Great job. I just want to, Thank you. Honestly, no, I'm not being shady. I'm being honest. Thank God for you, because I don't remember all of that. Now you told it to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember all of that. I remember talking about it on the live show. But like I said, for the most part, I was. This is the part that was probably the most boring for me because this was the time where either Marin or Ryan was on the block, and I didn't enjoy this season as much. So good on you for recounting everything that happened. Thank you so much, Taran. That's why you're here.
Yeah, and I mean it's such a weird thing to go over Paris's game, because we went over Derek's game, and like these weeks were very quiet for Derek because he was safe and he didn't need to do much. And the same can be said of Paris, where Paris has been safe in these weeks, but the difference is that Paris is attempting to do a ton more and failing to do almost all of it. So almost all of this is inconsequential, and a lot of it comes down to I just got a tweet from Tom Palmer, like her wishy-washiness of like, should I do this? Should I do this? Her thinking that she can do this when she actually can't. Ultimately, there's not a ton of difference between the position that Paris holds and the position that Derek holds at this point in the game. The main difference is that Paris is just trying a ton of stuff and making a bunch of mistakes and putting herself in danger, but then getting out of it and going going back. It's like if Derek was a steady line of like safe, doing his social game, Paris is like up and down and up and down and up and down, but the average is about the same.
Yeah, totally. If Ika Wong was on the show, she would have said just what you said, but she would have said it with a different inflection. Like, Paris tried it, she tried it, and I'm not here for it.
Yes.
Try at me.
So, let's see. Sorry, I scrolled down too far. So
Marin was just evicted. Marin
is evicted. We head into week 6, and Kayla wins the HOH. Paris is the first out of this HOH competition. Paris is going to once again be frustrated at the result and say, I need to win more competitions. My allies are all going out, so on and so forth. But this is the week where Kayla goes on a quest. She wants to discover, why the hell did people vote to keep Ryan in this house? I'm very annoyed about this. I'm going to question everyone individually and find out what happened. This is when Ryan says, okay, what happened was Maddie told me to say that I was going after you guys. She told me to tell Johnny, then to tell Paris, and then Will. Erica had nothing to do with it. And Kayla's going to be like, whoa, okay. She's going to continue to question people. Allie, meanwhile, wants Paris again on the block. Allie continues to want Paris out of this house. But granted, she wants Paris on the block, but she's thinking about potentially backdooring Johnny. That's a whole other side of the house and side of the story. But she wants Paris on the block instead of Maddie. Kayla's leaning more toward Maddie in terms of what she might do. When Kayla questions Paris, Paris is again. Thank God Paris had this instinct, this survival instinct, because it's really what ends up saving her most weeks. This is a case where she goes with her instinct and then changes her mind and is successful for once with the change of mind. But at first she says, "Oh yeah, it wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. It was Johnny and Maddie. They wanted to come after you. They suck. I would never do that to you. It was all them. It's totally the worst." And then she goes to Johnny and she says, "Hey Johnny, I think that Allie might be throwing you under the bus because Kayla was talking about how something was wrong with you, and I didn't say anything, but I think probably Allie said something. I don't know what's going on there." And so at this point, Kayla is like, "Yes, I want to backdoor Johnny. I want Maddie on the block. We're all good about this." But Maddie cries to Paris. She's like, because Kayla tells Maddie that she's the target, and Maddie's like, "Oh my God, this is the worst." She cries to Paris. "I can't believe this is happening. I don't know why this is happening." Paris feels incredibly guilty because, again, Paris, in throwing Maddie under the bus, feels like she's responsible for this. So she goes back to Kayla and she says, "Now I'm going to fix the wrong that I just did." In the same way that she threw Veronica under the bus and then felt like she was the cause of Veronica going home and that she could change it. This is actually true in this case. She goes back, she changes it. She says, "Actually, it was Ryan that did everything. Maddie had nothing to do with it. He convinced every single one of them in different ways. I feel so dumb, guys. I feel so dumb that Ryan convinced us like that." And she succeeds. This is, again, one of her more shining moments on the season. But it's kind of like an impressive thing that accomplished not a lot.
Very little. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It was impressive, but it's like you pull the rabbit out of the hat and somebody they saw you stick it in the hat and then you pull it back out. Oh, it's still a rabbit. Yeah, you did it, but we saw what was happening. It's not that impressive. I think that I'm trying. I had thought about this specifically. Her specifically targeting Maddie at the beginning, throwing her under the bus, was obviously it was a misplay because Maddie was loyal to her. Again, I'll say this throughout the entire thing. Maddie was too loyal, if anything, to Paris and Will. I went out for a little while. This is the night that I went out. I thought for sure Kayla was going to nominate Will. I thought Will was going to hit the block, and I think
that was the
Johnny.
Initial plan. It was Will and Johnny with Will as the target.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I was all psyched about that because this is when I was totally off the Will train. Even his voice wasn't doing it for me at this point. And I left. And all of a sudden, like I woke up the next morning and I looked at the news and I was trying to get caught up on what was happening. And I see what has happened. And I'm like, what the hell? How is Ryan all of a sudden back in the crosshairs of Kayla? How did this happen? And then I saw what happened with Paris throwing him under the bus and somehow getting in Kayla's head. And again, good on her for doing it, but she's basically trading an ally for an ally with Paris and Ryan there. So I'm not sure that it accomplished much at the end of the day.
Yeah, and she is going to again regret the decision to put Ryan under the crosshairs of Kayla later on in the week. So she eventually. After her conversation with Kayla, she goes to Ryan and she says, "Ryan, you know I had nothing to do with targeting Dayla. You know this. That was all Maddie. It's all Maddie's fault, and that is the story, and we are sticking to it because that is the truth, Ryan. That is the truth." And Ryan is like, "That is the truth. It is all Maddie. Maddie sucks." And again, Paris has the key to Ryan's. Paris and Johnny both have the keys to Ryan's brain. And Ryan is going to leave this house eventually, thinking that Maddie sucks. Maddie did all this to him. He's going to get into a big fight with Maddie later on, and he's still going to love Paris. It's interesting. The people who love Paris the most are the ones that she's thrown under the bus the most, and they don't quite realize it.
Yeah, don't have any inclination that that's what really was going on behind the scenes.
Yes. So Johnny ends up winning the veto. We know that he considered using it, but he doesn't ultimately use it.
Why didn't you use it, Johnny? If you would have used it, then you would have been safe. They would have backdoored Erica. Erica would have been safe. I'm sorry. They would have backdoored Erica. Erica would have gone up on the block. The twist would have saved Erica. And, you know, who knows who would have went home at that point? I don't even know who would have went home.
Crazy stuff.
But yeah, I know, right? Maybe Will. Maybe it would have been lucky. I don't know. But Erica could have dodged a bullet if only Johnny pulled the trigger. But without the twist in play, Johnny did make the correct move because obviously what he wanted to have happen was not going to have happen. He basically one of his own allies, and Erica was going to be backdoored if he did use the veto on Will at this point. So good on him for basically he did the right thing at the wrong time. Like it was the right thing to do that, but it was the wrong time. Like, I mean, if you could pick any other week, it was probably the right call. But this week in particular, you probably should have made a mistake because if you make the mistake, Canada's going to come and fix it for you. And unfortunately, because you didn't make the mistake, Canada's still going to try and fix your quote unquote mistake and save somebody from the block in Ryan, and then your girl's going to go home. What a downer.
And he apparently also would have saved the ratings for the show. So
yeah, Erica was everything this season. I mean, like I told you, like out of all the people who were coming into the house, and I don't know if I have our draft in front of me. I was trying to see where here it is over here. She was like, Erica was taken in the bottom half of our draft by you. At number 10. Looking back, I'm like, that was amazing that she fell that far. She was a blessing. She was an illumination on this season. I really, really am bummed that she was the victim of that twist. But oh well, that's Big Brother Canada.
It is. This is going to be the start of Paris berating Maddie because now Paris has very concrete proof. I saved you, Maddie. And she feels like Maddie is indebted to her. And so she's going to get very upset with Maddie. Anytime she sees Maddie talking to Kayla, she's, hey, what are you doing? Why are you talking to Kayla? I think this is also like, this is the start. Essentially, like it's like a jealous boyfriend or girlfriend that's like, why are you talking to that person? What were you wearing when you're talking to that person? What's going on here? Like, I don't like this. And anytime that Maddie talks to Kayla, even briefly, she's like, what are you doing? You're going to screw everything up. And that's going to continue to happen. However, this is also when she works on her jury management with Ryan some more. This is some of the more impressive stuff that Paris is doing. She further cements their bond. She talks about Ryan's jury vote. He says he would vote for Paris over Maddie. Paris plans on bringing Maddie to the final two at this point in time. So she feels like that's the question she really needs to know. Are you willing to vote for me over Maddie? Ryan tells her she will need to explain every aspect of her game if she expects him to vote for her. So we'll see how that plays out.
See. Yes.
And at this point, she's like, I made a mistake. I don't want Ryan gone. I also don't want Maddie gone, but I shouldn't have targeted Ryan. I'm so frustrated. I need to win more competitions. And then she, so then because of that, she talks to Dayla and she's like, can we target Erica, Olivia, and Allie? Like, can we get rid of these people? They're too powerful. And she wants to, and she feels good about that conversation, despite Dayla not feeling feeling great about Paris in that conversation. And she starts talking to Will about like, maybe we should be working with Dela. And again, I feel like this all comes back to Derek opening that door, and Paris is now walking through it. And she's talking to Will like, let's work with Dela potentially. Will is like, no, why would we work with Dela? He runs to Johnny and he says, Paris is talking about like Dela trying to bring us in. And Johnny is going to end up telling Erica, Allie, and Liv, watch out. I think Dela is trying to pick up the trio. And that's going to be very important for the following week, when Johnny is going to be fighting for his life. But ultimately, we see the outcome of this week. Canada saves Ryan. Erica is evicted. Paris is a vote to evict Erica, and that's our week.
Yes, and I know this is easy, and people are like, yeah, of course she did that. But Paris played it exactly right, where, Kayla's like, look, if I put her up on the block, will you vote to evict her? Given that Paris is a potential nominee at this point, the answer is yes. I will do whatever you want. Just don't put me up on the block. And she evicted Erica. Good for her.
Yes, so we head into week 7. Derek wins the HOH. His target is Johnny. Paris and Maddie are very happy about this outcome. Paris is like, yes, this is great. We wanted to work with Dela. Dela's in power. They're targeting Johnny. Johnny's a huge threat in this game. Paris and Maddie are both like, yes, we want Johnny gone. We are so happy about this. He is so much more dangerous than Ryan. Ryan is on our side. This is amazing. Allie and Liv, however, are a little bit like, we're fine with targeting Johnny, but we'd rather get Paris out of the game. Allie's still trying to get Paris out. Paris, very, it's a good thing that Paris manages to maintain good relationships with the people that are actually winning competitions, because Allie's been trying to get her out of this house for so long.
Honestly, Allie reminds me of like the villain in Scooby-Doo, where she's just like shaking her fist at like, little nasty kid,
Yeah. Yep. They want the trio up on that block. She tries and fails to get Paris nominated with Kayla. Her and Liv are. This is when it's been so long that Allie has been trying to get Paris up on the block and potentially out of the game. That even though she's failing to do it, this is when she's actually going to start to do some real damage to Paris's game, in terms of her long-term viability as a player. Allie is going to start talking about how Paris is really dangerous. She's never been nominated. And this is going to get into Kayla's head. And if Kayla wins the final 3 HOH and doesn't take Paris, I think it will all come back to just how long Allie and Liv were, trying to target Paris, and then eventually just, started just really throwing her under the bus in week 7 when Derek was HOH. They were like, Paris is dangerous. You have to see this. The very next week, Kayla and Derek are going to be saying, Paris is really dangerous. We can't take her to the final 2. So I think it starts here with Allie and Liv. And so that's important to note if that ends up playing a part in the final 3 HOH.
Man, previous to this week, I had never heard anybody, nary a person, say that Paris was a dangerous opponent in the final 2. And this is where it begins. And I really do weird through that it was all Allie and Olivia's, but mostly Allie's doing, where she's trying to say, you know what, you cannot take Paris to the end. She has too many friends. She has good relationships with everybody. If Ryan, Maddie, Will, even you guys, like everybody likes Paris. There's a reason she's never been nominated. And if Paris ends up losing the game because of that, I guess that will be kind of amazing, because if she ends up not making it to the final 2 because of those conversations, that and it's one of those conversations that really marinated well, where Allie said it and then she said it again and then she said it again and she said it at a different point in time, and eventually, like, it's sort of like, I don't know, Stockholm syndrome, where you say something over and over and over to somebody, and even if it's not true, and I think it actually might be kind of true in this case, but even if it's not true, some people start to believe it because you've said it so much and they thought about it so much. It becomes, but basically perception becomes reality. And so I feel like that's what happened this week with Paris, specifically about being talked about by Allie.
Yes. So ultimately, Johnny and Ryan are nominated. Johnny is going to make a pitch to Paris and Will to stay in the game. And this is, we're going to, we skipped over a lot of Johnny's campaigning yesterday when we talked about Derek, because Derek was not involved. However, Paris was very involved. So there's a lot to talk about here in week 7 with what happened with Johnny. Johnny pitches to Paris and Will. And so right now, Paris is feeling good about Dela. She's feeling good about Johnny leaving. She's feeling good that she has Ryan. Those are all, positive things for her. But Johnny says, Yeah, Johnny says,
No. Yes.
watch out. Dela has a Final Four with Allie and Liv. That's the only reason they would be on board to take me out of this game. You have to see this. Paris doesn't believe it at first. But then he says, look out too, because they're also trying to pull in Maddie. I have it on good authority that they've been schmoozing Maddie. They're trying to get Maddie on their side. Here's some details about like what's been happening from my perspective. And Paris is starting to go, wait a minute. Okay. I do think Maddie is super sketchy. I can kind of believe this. She's starting to be swayed a little bit. She's saying, if this is true, then we may need Johnny to stay in this game. And Johnny is also going to tell her to cap it all off. Allie has never trusted you, and she is gunning for you. She has been doing so for a long time. And Paris is like, oh boy, that's no good. So Paris is a bit shaken by this conversation with Johnny. And when Paris is shaken, she gets even more indecisive. And that's going to open the door for Johnny to stay this week. And so Johnny is meanwhile going to be pitching to Liv and Allie, who are like, there's no way Paris or the trio is going to be willing to keep you. They have Ryan on their side. That's not going to happen. But he's like, well, look, Dela is trying to pull in the trio. You guys need to be worried about this. And again, like selling to both sides that, you got to watch out for Dela playing with the other side. And that pushes them in the direction of keeping them. We have all of this stuff about how Johnny needs to maintain both of these things. We covered that very extensively over the course of that week. Will wants Johnny to stay at this point. Paris is still kind of hesitant, but she says she's willing to if they get the votes. Derek is going to propose a Final Four to Will and Paris. We talked about that yesterday. Because again, interesting, that ended up being the Final Four. Paris wants to accept this because again, she was feeling good about Dela, but she says, I can't trust them. After what Johnny said, I just don't think I can trust Dela. What I want to do is get Dela to not trust Allie and Liv so I can feel more comfortable working with Dela. And Allie and Liv are going to pitch very earnestly to keep Johnny, which convinces Paris that she needs Johnny to go because she doesn't trust Allie and Liv. Again, that was the difficulty of Johnny's position. And she then...
How did he end up doing this again? I mean, I know how, but please tell the people. I can't remember how this happened. Like with Johnny's thing, because it sounds incredible. How did he do this?
It was crazy. So that Paris will go to Dela and say, you guys, you can't trust Allie and Liv. They are potentially keeping Johnny. I don't think this is a good idea for you to trust them. Dela does not believe her. They still are in the mode of Paris is obviously trying to play us.
Right.
Whatever. Paris is going to say her thing. Derek wins the veto. He doesn't use it. Johnny is going to talk to Paris even more. He's going to say to Paris, look, Kayla has been saying things about you. You need to target Dela. Dela is a huge threat in this game. They're working with Allie and Liv. I promise. Allie and Liv still want to target you. You have to be worried about this. Paris is going to be a little conflicted, as she often is. She's going to talk to the camera. She's say, I don't want to keep Johnny, but I do need Dela to go, but I'm only willing to do it if it's a triple eviction, not if it's a regular eviction. I've saved Maddie. I've taken out Erica and Hamza. I've been in control of most of the votes of this game. I just need to figure out the right thing to do this week. This is when we started to really realize just how much Paris thought that she was in control of the game.
Delusion, thy name is Paris at this point.
Yeah. At this point, Will and Maddie have been convinced by Johnny to keep him. And Paris is kind of feeling like, well, no, that doesn't really make sense for me. But she's unable to stop them from wanting Johnny to stay. Johnny is going to tell Paris that Kayla has been leaking information about her because he knows from Allie so Kayla told Allie some of the stuff that Paris was telling Kayla. And so that got back to Johnny through Allie. Johnny tells Paris, who is then mad at Kayla. And this is what ultimately gets her on board with keeping Johnny in the game. Of course, Johnny has to hide where he got this information from because he can't say that Allie leaked him information, because if Allie is on his side, then Paris is not going to be willing to keep him in the game. So again, very tricky tightrope to walk, but he manages it. Allie and Liv are going to. So at this point, everybody is on board to keep Johnny. He's managed the flip, but Paris does not want to let anyone know that she is on board with this. She wants to pretend that she's not on board. And because of that, Allie and Liv are going to get to Dela first and let them know the vote is slipping. We kind of want to keep Johnny. Paris is then going to talk to Derek and say, hey, yeah, the vote is slipping, but I don't want it to. This is the worst. I hate that the vote is slipping. I'm so scared of Johnny being in this house. Derek is going to leave this conversation, and she's going to be like, yes, haha, I tricked you. I'm pretending to be scared of Johnny, but really, I know that he's on my side, and that I have masterminded this plan to keep him. And Derek is going to be like, I'm glad Johnny, that Paris is scared of Johnny. That makes me want to keep Johnny. I hate Paris.
Right.
Derek was not a fan of Paris.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah. So Kayla ends up, one of the reasons Kayla is on board to take out Ryan is because she's like, well, Paris does have Ryan. That kind of sucks. And Paris is scared of Johnny. So that's a good thing. Paris is laughing at Allie and Liv for thinking that they had something to do with flipping the house to keep Johnny, when really it was her and Will. Paris is going to be, again, the one person that gives Ryan the heads up that he is going to be going home. More jury management happens there, and Ryan is ultimately evicted unanimously. And that is the abbreviated story of Johnny and Paris and in that week.
Yeah, this is the week where every title of every recap is Paris decides, or Paris, changes her mind, or it was just infuriating to watch, but it was a masterful job by Johnny. Good for him.
Yes, and hopefully Johnny is willing to come on with us to talk about his game, and we can talk about that week in more detail if you're interested in, because that was really an extraordinary week in terms of just how many things were being juggled. It was a lot of fun. So Ryan is evicted unanimously. Paris obviously a vote there to evict Ryan, but she does very well on his way out of the house. Again, being the one person that was like really honest with him. He comes out of the house saying that he would most likely vote for Johnny, but he loves Paris, and he would love to be able to vote for her. Although the one issue that Paris has with the jury management she's done with Ryan is that Ryan doesn't respect her. He doesn't respect her game. He loves her as a person, doesn't respect her game. That may be the thing that ends up not doing well for her. This whole thing of like, I'm so dumb, I'm bad at this game, I can't believe people trick me so often. It worked to keep her safe, but it may not work to get her jury votes. We'll just have to wait and see when it comes to Ryan, at least.
I feel like if she can win Final 4 HOH and Final 3 HOH, because she's not being taken as far as I can tell, I think she's probably going to have to win her way there. If she can do that, I feel like that will probably be able to garner enough respect with a man who has said he's watched over 800 hours of Big Brother, mostly on television, if not all of it on television. And he'll give her her props. So let's see what happens.
We'll see. So then we head into week 8, final stretch here for the Paris recap. Johnny wins the HOH, and he calls a house meeting. And as I mentioned yesterday with the Derek thing, just blows up the game. He levels the entire strategic landscape. All the secrets come out. The real deal, everything, the showmance that she had with Jesse, everything comes out in the light. She gets into a big fight with Kayla about, who said what when it came to, targeting Ryan the week that happened. Did Paris throw Johnny under the bus, or did she throw Ryan under the bus? She did both. Just everything comes out into the open.
This was great, honestly, because it's no fun seeing Paris berate Maddie, because Maddie doesn't fight back, okay? But Paris going after Kayla was the tea, because Kayla was trying to save herself. She's also trying to save her showmance. She knows all of the secrets. She knows where all of the bodies are buried in the house, and she has no qualms about exposing everything. And that's what Johnny wanted in trying to gain information as HOH this week. He's trying to set himself up well, because everybody is so concerned about the triple eviction, and Johnny sees himself as a little bit of a Kevin Martin, where he doesn't want to go home on the triple eviction. That's his nemesis more than anything. He wants to try to insulate himself from that. So how can he do that? By really exposing everything that's going on, dropping all of the bombs in the house, and getting people mad at each other. I thought this was also well done by him.
Yeah, and this is the true climax of the season. All of the strategy led up to this big blow up where Johnny sets himself up to be safe in the triple eviction. But watch out, Johnny, because Derek will not go quietly into that good night. So Johnny wants Derek out of the house. Paris wants Kayla out of the house. However, Johnny manages to pull information from Derek, including Derek throwing Paris under the bus when it comes to the real deal and the Jesse thing. He uses that information to convince Paris that she should be voting Derek out over Kayla. This is actually going to end up backfiring on Johnny once Derek wins the veto, because now Paris feels actually kind of good with Kayla. She has a conversation with Kayla saying like, okay, I'm going to keep you over Derek. And they bond a little bit over that. And this is what Johnny wanted, because he wanted Derek to leave. He felt like he needed to get the votes to evict Derek, but then Derek wins the veto.
Curses.
And yes. And so Paris is going to feel more inclined as soon as Derek wins the veto to keep Kayla in the game over whoever may go up instead. Maddie and Will are going to talk about how they want Allie and Johnny in the final 5 with the trio. Paris doesn't want Allie there. She would rather have somebody else there with Johnny. And Dela, at this point, Allie's work has seeped into their brains. Plus after what happened with the big fight with Kayla and Paris, they're like, Paris is way too good at this game. Her social game is too good. We cannot take her to the final 2. This is when that really solidifies. After Dela is nominated, Paris is going to brag to the cameras, saying, "That's what you get. That's what you get when you go after me. You get on the block." Johnny will also start to separate Will from Paris using the information he got from Derek, the real deal, this showmance with Jesse, and it's going to start to work, which is going to worry Paris. She's like, why is Will turning on me? She sees that Will is getting close to Johnny. That makes her angry at Johnny. So now her plan is, I want both of Dela out of the house, then I want Johnny out. Johnny is my target after we get both of Dela out of the house. Again, then this is when she talks to Kayla. She's like, I'm going to keep you over Derek. Then Derek wins the veto. And Paris is like, okay, well, maybe we should target Allie and Liv. I know Allie and Liv are coming after us. Again, something that Johnny did to stay last week, turning Paris against Allie and Liv, ends up sort of backfiring on him here, where he has to put Allie up on the block, and Paris is going to be like, maybe we should keep Kayla in the game. I don't know. Maybe we should do this, Brent.
Yeah, this was impossible for Johnny to manage. Good on him for doing as well as he was able to do. But all of the things that he had done in the previous week were required to be undone in the following week in order for him to get what he wanted. He had it in front of him. I've said it before that this is, two different things happened this season. Comp wins by other people to alter other people's games. This win by Derek totally changed the landscape for Johnny specifically. I swear, even if Kayla wins the veto, I do think that Derek ultimately is still evicted, even if he does have to place Allie on the block. But because of the bond that Kayla has cultivated with Paris, or that Paris has kept open with Kayla, even when they were fighting, they still kind of play made up with each other, made up with each other, and of course they're laughing about it behind the scenes. But it does bear a little bit of fruit, as we talked about in one of the live roundtables. I feel like that it was just an impossible situation for Johnny, and because of that, it just was too juicy for Paris to pass up when Johnny's forced to pick a side, and he's gonna pick, the trio side. So he's gonna put Allie on the block as a replacement nominee. And Paris is sitting there like, well, there's this one girl who's promising me the world, and there's this other girl who, as we're going to talk about, promises me basically nothing. And why shouldn't I keep her? It's incredible that they were able to survive this week intact.
Yes, and so this is when the infamous waffling happens. I could not tell you the details about every single flip back and forth if I wanted to, but it starts with Kayla making a pitch to Paris, and Paris actually doesn't buy the Kayla pitch at first. She's like, Kayla's making some okay points, but I can't trust her. I can't keep her in this game because I can't trust her in this game. However, Allie ends up opening the door when she talks to Maddie, and she tells Maddie, I don't even need your vote. And this turns Maddie against Allie when she was kind of leaning toward keeping Allie. So Allie is going to end up really sinking her own ship when she talks to Maddie there. Maddie will then go to Paris, who will talk to Paris about, like, I'm not on board with Allie. Like Allie just said these things to me. I'm kind of thinking maybe we should keep Kayla. And Paris, who had just talked to Kayla, is despite not trusting what she said, is kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I can trust Kayla, but like I'm hearing what you're saying. I don't know if we can trust Allie either. Over the next couple of days, they're gonna go back and forth. Allie's not gonna say a word to them. Meanwhile, Paris is gonna be talking to Kayla and Derek, and they, as you mentioned, are going to be promising Paris the world.
And it helped that it was truthful, because, if you're promising somebody something that's not truthful, then usually people will be able to see through it, or they'll see that, it doesn't make sense for you to be saying what you're saying you're going to agree to. Like, well, I can't think of an example, but, obvious lies in the history of Big Brother where people are saying, I'm going to target my best friend if I win HOH next week. Like when Jesse was like saying that he was going to target Dela if he won, or if he stayed in the house. And of course not. He's not going to do that. That's an unbelievable lie. But in this case, Derek and Kayla were being truthful. They were going to be honest and loyal with the trio if they were able to stay in the house this week. So I feel like that authenticity is what helped sell it for them.
Yes. And so Paris is going to go to Kayla and be like, okay, maybe we're willing to keep you, once she knows that Maddie is actually leaning heavily toward keeping Kayla. Maybe we're willing to keep you. Maybe I'm willing to convince my allies to keep you. But you need to stop throwing me under the bus. You need to stop doing all these things. And Kayla is going to be like, Paris thinks that she's going to convince people to keep me. Maddie's already talked to me. I already know Maddie wants to keep me. Paris is trying to pretend like she's got power here. Paris is trying to play us once again. Not happy about that. But we're still willing to keep our end of the deal. Like we're promised the world. If they keep us, we will keep them safe.
Right, because they were so pathetic. That's the real. Yeah. That's the real tea. I know that's so terrible to say, but really what sold it for them. Like, yeah, we're going to keep this entire trio safe for the triple eviction and take them to the final five, which seems like a knucklehead thing to do when you have a twosome and a threesome, but they're so freaking terrible. We'll chance it anyway. What the hell, And that's why they agreed to it.
Yes, and there's going to be more waffling back and forth. Both of Derek in particular will swear on his family. I think that Derek swearing on his family was very effective. Kayla swears on her cats. That ends up being decently effective as well. There's more waffling back and forth. It's starting to look like ultimately, Johnny gets involved. He starts some fights. This sort of makes the trio lean toward keeping Allie. But then toward the end of the day on Thursday, right before the vote, they are leaning toward keeping Allie. Paris goes to Allie for some final confirmation. She says, "Are we good here?" Allie's like, "Yes, absolutely. You're not going to put me up." "No." "What if the veto is used?" "Paris, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. I can't. Don't do this to me." And just totally blows herself up. Completely just blows everything. And at that point, there was still a little bit of waffling back and forth, but for the most part, it really just was sort of a spiral downhill in terms of the potential to keep Allie. However, don't underestimate their waffling, as we've talked about. If Will votes first,
I know.
We may see a different outcome. Everything regarding that, but ultimately, I think it comes down to Allie just really screwing the pooch here. I don't say this very often on this show, but Allie, you dumb bitch! Like, what the hell? Like, listening to it again, it's just even worse. Like, I remember that they were close to keeping you, and you got right up to the line. It was like you ran a marathon and you ran 26 miles and you've got 0.2 to go. All you got to do is say, well, what if the veto's used? Well, I'm not targeting you, Paris. You're obviously going to keep me. So, that's the answer. The answer is not, don't put me in this position. I'm just, to think that they could have had this, dynamo duo in Kayla and Derek, one part of them out of the house in this moment, in one fell swoop. That's all Allie had to say. And she just dropped the ball, man. Oh, that's so terrible. Dropped that ball. So ultimately, Allie is evicted from the Big Brother Canada 6 house. But the week is not over because there's a triple eviction. And Derek is going to pull this triple eviction HOH out. It was a must win for him. The trio would have been going after Dela if they could. Potentially one of Dela, one of Johnny, probably both of Dela. But Derek wins the HOH. He nominates Johnny, Olivia, and Maddie. Kayla ends up winning the veto. And Dela does stick to their word. They take out Johnny and Olivia, and we're down to the final 5 going into week 9.
Yeah, amazing. This is, they, like I said before, I don't mean to repeat myself, but they got what they wanted to have happen. They were so concerned about making it through the triple eviction, as Taran and I have talked about before with Melissa, that this was probably the better move for them over in the long term in terms of surviving the triple eviction. This was always the move that Paris needed to make, was keeping Kayla in the game, because Kayla and Derek were going to be true to them and keep the trio safe through the triple eviction if they won. Now, ironically, I feel like Maddie would have also, Allie, I feel like Allie, if she had stayed, there was so much animosity with Kayla and Derek. I feel like, obviously, if Kayla is evicted, Derek probably still wins that HOH, and he is probably going to end up targeting them anyway. So they may have still got the same result, but it was interesting to watch Kayla specifically win the veto. She admitted afterwards, I think, right? I'm not making this up. She thought about like using it and taking Olivia off the block, but ultimately it just wasn't in the cards, and she felt like she had to keep her word to the trio, and it got them all to the final 5 where they're celebrating like they've won something, Taran.
Yes, however, Paris is going to immediately regret her decision quite strongly. When Kayla wins the HOH, Paris is in tears, saying that she made the wrong call, that Canada is going to see her. Can we talk about this?
Okay, I want to know from you. Do you think she made the wrong call?
I think I have to be results oriented. If she's able to beat one of them in the final 2, then she probably ends up making the right call. If she is incapable of winning against them in the final 2, then I think there's no situation where then that she can win, and that means it was probably the wrong call.
Yeah, I just go back to the fact that Maddie was a tiebreak away from winning this one, and also Paris knew the answer. She just made one, mistake, and she tried to change it, but the answers were already locked in. It was so close to getting what they wanted it to have happen, which was Maddie finally pulling out a comp win at the final 5. If Maddie's HOH there, obviously Derek or Kayla go home. Actually, Derek goes home because Kayla won the veto. It would have been a really fun final 4 with the trio and Kayla, and I think it would have been anybody's game. But what ended up happening was probably even better.
Yeah, I mean, I think on one of my Twitch streams, somebody asked me like, how would it have played out if they had decided to evict Kayla instead? And like trying to think about it, Derek still probably wins the HOH. He probably nominates Johnny. I think
Allie.
He would nominate Allie and potentially even Olivia, but maybe Maddie, maybe one of the
probably Maddie. Yeah,
it'd probably be Maddie. And then I think Maddie came in second in the veto, so she probably takes that veto if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So Maddie can either take herself off the block or choose not to use the veto. Either way, the trio would still control the votes. I think that Johnny and Allie would both go in the triple. And then that would lead down to the final 5 of Derek, Olivia, Maddie, Will, and Paris. And Maddie probably wins that final 5 HOH. So I think it probably looks better for the trio and for Paris in particular if they decide to evict Kayla. But I mean, that's very results oriented. I think the decision is so difficult to make. There's so many unpredictable variables with the triple and moving forward. But again, I think that leaving Kayla in the game, you have to be able to beat one of her or Derek in the final 2 because they're basically going to be there if you let them stay. There's a very good chance that one of them is going to be there if you let them stay. Yeah,
because it has to be perfect. If you're going to keep them through to the final 5, then you're going to have to eliminate them at the final 5 and final 4, or maybe in the final 3. But you're going to have to be able to pull out a win when it counts. And they just, up until when it finally did happen, they were incapable of doing that here at the final 5.
Okay, cool. So I think the chat is saying maybe Liv was second. I couldn't remember.
Whatever.
Yeah, if Liv ends up winning the veto, then maybe that is a disaster scenario. If Liv isn't on the block and she saves Allie, and then two of the trio go up, that could be bad for them. But if Liv is on the block at first, then she takes herself up. But again, I mean, it goes to show just how anything
tenuous their position was. Yeah, and in this other way, their position was a lot more secure. So again, they secure their safety for the final 5, but it hurt their long-term game prospects in terms of winning the $100,000. If they go the other direction, they hurt their prospects in the near term, in the immediate future, but their long-term prospects for the game are probably a little bit brighter.
Yeah, and I will also say though that if somebody else, if Olivia or if I guess if Olivia had won the HOH, then they could have been in trouble. But you're right, it definitely made it more likely that they would survive the triple. But we'll move on from the decision because there was a lot of different variables. But ultimately they decided with Allie. The triple eviction happens. Kayla wins the HOH in week 9. Paris is regretting the decision at this point. She feels like Canada is going to look down on her as a floater. She's going to end up redirecting all of that guilt and regret and anger toward Maddie.
Bitch,
we did this for you, Maddie. I can't believe you. And Kayla wants to put Paris on the block. She does not want Paris to be able to say that she was never nominated. And then we get this whole situation with Maddie talking to Kayla. Paris gets very angry whenever Maddie talks to Kayla. And this was, even more so. This was, the worst of what we've seen in terms.
This was it.
Yeah.
This is it.
Go ahead.
I just have to come for Paris here. Paris, you were such a bitch this week. Honestly, honey, you just needed to take a second and remember that this is a game. You got, I've said it before, you got what you wanted to happen. You wanted to be safe at all costs through the triple eviction, and you got it. It's on you that you weren't able to pull out a win. You were the person who decided to lock in an answer too quickly and then weren't able to change it. That was all your fault. I've been to Big Brother Canada tapings. They give people all the time in the world to think of their answers. That was totally on her. She couldn't own her BS, basically. And that was so frustrating. And then to attack Maddie, who's such a sweet girl. Look, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about Maddie as a player. She was a little bit boring, a little bit vanilla, and I would have liked her to play a lot harder, over the entire course of the game. But she was a really sweet gal. She didn't deserve the treatment that she was getting from both Paris and Will. Will, you two, you both were just really horrible, nasty people in that moment. And you're going to regret it when you come out of the house, because I guarantee you're going to be called to the carpet about it. And look, I mean, I'm willing to forgive and forget, because I hadn't seen her act that bad all season, but that was really tough to watch.
Yeah, and I will say it's important to point out, because there are two different possibilities about the results of her actions against Maddie for basically the whole season. There was the week that Kayla was HOH and that Paris got very mad at Maddie for talking to Kayla. And then there was this week when Paris did it again. And of course, she had been not only throwing Maddie under the bus, but also insulting Maddie for a long time behind her back. Right. So despite all of this, Maddie still feels very close to Paris, and she does feel guilty, and it works. Maddie feels guilty. She's not even campaigning against Paris very much. And Maddie goes into the jury house liking Paris and wanting to vote for her, even though she said to me that she would vote for Derek or Kayla over Paris. It's not because she has any bad feelings about Paris. It's mostly just that she doesn't respect Paris's game as much as she might respect Derek or Kayla's. We'll see how that plays out when it gets to the jury. But so the important thing to note is that despite everything, Paris manages to keep Maddie liking her. She manages to keep Ryan liking her, despite throwing Ryan under the bus multiple times. If those people vote for her in the jury, then there's something to be said about Paris's ability to be very, I guess, maybe I mean this in a positive way, two-faced, right? Where she's able to be throw people under the bus on one end and then turn around to them and be like, "Oh no, I love you," and they believe it.
Well, she's very empathetic.
Yeah.
And she has, she wears her heart on her sleeve. That's something positive, and that's something that I can identify with. And the fact that she's able to put on a nice face for people sometimes. And I also think her naivete, her youth, I feel like really aids her. And not only that, I feel like she wears herself very young. Does that make sense? Where she's a young person who really acts and looks like a young person at times. And so you're a little bit more willing to forgive and forget and chalk it up to, oh, they were just mad or they were just said something. Whereas with someone who you probably expect a little bit more out of, you probably aren't as forgiving.
Yes. So that said, that's how she may win the game if she wins because of Ryan and Maddie's votes, despite having thrown them under the bus and insulted them. That's how she could potentially win. How she could potentially lose is we don't know how Ryan and Maddie feel about Paris now. They're in the jury house and they're with people in the jury house that are very capable of saying, actually, Paris has been saying trash about you all season long, and that may turn them off of Paris. And then the second thing about the jury is that, again, neither Maddie or Ryan really respected Paris's game a whole lot. And that's another thing that she needs to worry about when it comes to the jury votes. They like Paris, and that may get tarnished when it comes to revealing what Paris has said about them. And even if that doesn't get tarnished, they don't respect Paris as much as some of the other people. So they're like their fondness of Paris needs to overwhelm their more rational sense of who they respect and convince them that Paris is worthy of a vote. If it happens, then I think that's impressive that Paris has managed to win these kinds of votes and make these kinds of connections with the jury management that she has done. If it doesn't happen, I think we can illustrate like this is where she probably fell short in terms of she talked too much behind their backs. And she didn't advocate for her own game enough to them, which is kind of strange given how much she advocated for her own game to the cameras.
Yeah. This was the story of the season for Paris. I mean, the entire live feed contingent on Twitter was saying to Paris, stop talking to us. We can see what's going on. You don't need to tell us what you're doing. Go out there and do it. And you think that she would be a better advocate for herself within the actual players in the game, not just the cameras who are watching her.
Yes. So ultimately, Will makes a deal with Derek that he will not use the veto. He swears on his family. He tells Paris this. Paris is like, what are you doing? You need to break that deal. She's unsuccessful in getting Will to back down. Of course, it's hard to blame Paris for not realizing that Will might even throw the veto. But ultimately, her lack of ability to prevent Will from going through with this deal is going to open the door for Derek to talk Will off of the Final Four veto competition. You can also say maybe she should have spoken up more during the competition.
I think Maddie is the one who needed to talk more than anything, because Maddie knew she was in the hot seat. She needed to be the one to really push it and say, Will, and they're coming for you. They're lying. They will. Like, obviously, you've shown just right now you're potential. You're showing it right now. They will evict you if you throw this. She needed to be the one, Maddie I'm talking about, to get in there and make sure that Will hung on to that. Paris was in a really tough zero-sum game where she could potentially get Will, who's never won a comp before, to win this and stay in there. But in doing so, she might endanger herself long-term with Kayla and Derek if she spoke up. So I sort of understood her when she decided not to say anything.
Yeah, and on my part also, like I find it hard to fault Paris too much, just because like if I'm Paris and I'm watching Will in this competition, I'm not genuinely expecting him to drop. Like when I watched it happen, I was like, okay, Will is not dropping, and then just out of nowhere he goes down. I wouldn't think I needed to convince him to not drop. So it's hard to blame her that much for not speaking up for that reason as well. So then we're gonna get Paris trying to convince Kayla to cut Derek, but that's gonna not be successful. Kayla doesn't use the veto. Maddie ends up going home, which leads us to the final for week 10, where we see Paris is the most danger Paris has ever been in. She is by far the most likely person to go home, but she pulls out a clutch HOH win when she finally really truly needs it. She's been talking all season long, every single week. I need to win that next competition. I need to win that next HOH. She finally pulls it out. She keeps herself safe in the final four, and we'll be moving on to the final three with this HOH win.
Yes, she will.
So Derek will win the final four HOH.
Okay, yes. One last time, Taran. Yes, I was thrilled to see this. I knew she could do it, and she had all the information in her head. It was just a matter of executing. She's a fan of the show. She's a life eater. She's someone who knows Big Brother Canada specifically and Big Brother US. So she knew she could win this, and I was really psyched to see it happen. It was great. And I think, honestly, I feel like Derek was a little stunned. He was like, well, that was quick. Like, I mean, he was just basically over before he knew it. And it was totally the kind of comp that she needed. Something with just her and the buzzer and the information in front of her. That's all it was. And there were no other things that were happening. And she did it. So good for her.
Yes. So unfortunately,
and I knew it all along. I never doubted her for a second.
She could win this competition. Unfortunately for Paris, both her and Will fail to win the final 4 veto, which means that Will goes home and Paris is going to the final 3 with Derek and Kayla. We talked about it extensively last night. I highly recommend you go and check out the roundtable we did last night. We went over every possible scenario in the final 3 based on who brings who to the final 2 and what each jury vote would be. We have Alexandra, the great Alexandra on Twitter, made a chart of our choices, and looking here, Brent and I apparently, we think anything is possible, but our most likely predictions for what are going to happen, we don't really see that Paris is likely to win the game regardless of what happens here. If she wins HOH, she takes Kayla, or if she takes Kayla, then Kayla probably wins. If Kayla cuts Derek and takes her, Kayla still probably wins, we think, at least. But Melissa thinks that Paris wins in that situation. That was the one situation of any of them where Melissa thinks that if Kayla wins the HOH and brings Paris, then Paris can win 4-3. But other than that, in terms of our predictions, we don't think Paris is likely to win. But these are like, this is a 55-45 situation, and we're predicting the 55. But anything can happen. I don't think Paris is drawing dead by any means.
Oh, I don't think she's drawing dead either. And I'm really psyched because it sort of just dawned on me that tomorrow is it. Like, it's tomorrow. Like, we're going to find out everything that we need to know tomorrow night. Like, just a reminder again to stay off Twitter and any social media after, say, about 4:30 p.m. That's usually when spoilers start to trickle out from the live taping. And I really am psyched to see what happens, because if I could use a magic wand and get my wish, I want Kayla to win the final HOH. I want her to cut Derek, and I want her to win like 5-2, which is, I think, what I predicted. I want Paris to get second place, $20,000. I think she's been the second best player this season, maybe the third best. Maybe you can say Derek's second best, but I don't really want him to get any money. I want Kayla to win Big Brother, and both of them have so many fans, and I can't wait to cheer them on and potentially meet them on a live podcast afterwards.
Yeah, and I'll say it's going over Paris's game. It's, again, very difficult to construct a coherent narrative in terms of
that's the problem, isn't
what she was doing. Ultimately, when we talk about Paris's strengths, it was, as we've talked about, in survival. She was good at staying alive and not being targeted and portraying herself to be not worth the effort. And that was what allowed her to succeed and then the other thing that kept her alive was her ability to hold on to the allies that she had, Ryan, Maddie, and Will in particular, being able to keep them loyal despite the amount of dysfunction that was going on between them, keeping them close while also keeping herself safe. Those are the things that allowed Paris to succeed. And then everything else, for the most part, was a failure. She was not successful in basically any plan that she tried to enact. And even the times that she was successful, she often regretted it immediately after. But that doesn't matter, because what matters in this game is getting to the end and winning. And so if she does that, then she was successful and pretty good at keeping herself alive in the game. And that's really what matters at the end of the day.
I have to say that her strategy was so messy, and I agree with you that it was incoherent. There was no overarching strategy that I could see. It was just a week by week thing of trying to do what's best. You know who she reminds me of? She reminds me of my friend who I play poker with, Leanne, and we always call her the cockroach because she's always in these tournaments with me, and she's always down to like 3, 4, 5 big blinds, basically a level that you should never be at when you're in a poker tournament. You know, if you're below 10, you really should try to shove all in. And she drives people crazy because of her survival and the fact that she's able to just nickel and dime her way to the end of many of these tournaments. And I feel like in some ways Paris is the same, where in some ways people looked at her like she wasn't even important enough to be bothered with. Like, yeah, we know that Paris is lying. Yeah, we know she's, telling us a load of bull, but we don't really need to target her right now. We have other fish to fry. And so many people end up winning or getting to the end of Big Brother because other people have other fish to fry. And that was certainly Paris this season.
Yeah, Bubblegum in the chat says she would never own her survival game, unfortunately. She will claim every move other people made. And that's true as well. Like, I would say I would go as far as to say that I think Paris has great instincts for the game, but any like rational thought process is really bad.
Can I try really quickly? So I'm going to give her, this is Paris's best final 2 speech. Not that they really get to make one of a speech, but they give him like 30 seconds to a minute. Okay. So I'm Paris. Hey everybody. I know that many of you probably don't respect me because I didn't win many comps along the way, but I did win I'm going to assume she wins her way to the end. So I did win the most important HOHs of the season. I won when I need to, everybody else won when they didn't need to, and they got themselves evicted. I won only when I needed to, and that was when I was in danger at the final 4 and again at the final 3. I ended up taking out one of the biggest players in the game in terms of Derek. I think many of you out there may not respect some of the moves that I've made. Maybe you don't see all the moves that I've made, but you can't deny the fact that I'm here and that I survived when I needed to, and that I made sure the target wasn't on me or most of my allies for the duration of the first part of the game. I kept most of my allies safe. I made it to the final 5 with an entire trio intact, and maybe you think it's because I or my allies were too pathetic. I mean, I know she wouldn't say that, but we were too weak, that we couldn't win comps. But that was a deliberate strategy that I took early on, where I was throwing comps early on, and people were on to me. And there was a definite point in the game where I lost Jesse, and I had to reevaluate and try to rebuild my game. And I feel like I was able to do that. So as you can see, and this is now Brent talking, that was a lot of double speak, and I feel like there is she's going to, because I don't think she has the ability to be objective and say, I didn't really accomplish squat for most of the time. But if she can really just lean on the survival aspect and the fact that she won when she needed to, and that she was, a big fan of the game, which I didn't even mention, but I meant to, I feel like she's got a fighting chance, Taran.
Yeah, if I try to come up with like a simple or I guess weird sort of like analogy or metaphor for her game, it's almost like she's like Jason Bourne, right? Like she has these hidden skills that she doesn't remember or is not consciously aware of, and so like people are coming at her, and she's just like unconsciously like doing fight moves and shooting people in the face, and while she's doing it, she's like, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Oh crap, no, I wanted to do this, and oh no, I'm doing this, and then after everyone's lying dead on the floor, she's like, I did that. All right. That's kind of like Paris's game this season. I agree. I think that unfortunately, I think that she doesn't recognize her own strengths. She thinks that she played a different game, and I'm worried that if she tries to make that case to the jury that she played a mastermind game,
I agree,
survival game, then yeah, she'd be in trouble.
Rob did make a good point about the chick from Survivor Australia, who basically did what we think Paris is going to do, and claimed credit for everything. And this was her overarching plan, and believed it wholeheartedly, and the jury voted for her. So, I mean, who knows what the hell this jury's going to do, man. I have to believe that Kayla's got the inside track to win, but I've been surprised before.
Yes. All right. Well, we will see. So one other piece of news here. I believe we have learned that the jury roundtable or something. There's something going to happen with all the winners of Big Brother Canada 6.
Yes, there's going to be a roundtable with all the previous winners of Big Brother Canada. So Jillian, John, Sarah Hanlon, the Pax brothers, and Kevin Martin are all going to get together and chat about this season, which I think is really cool. and I'm really psyched to see. I don't know if they're going to do it in place of talking to the actual jury.
Yeah, that's what I was confused about.
Yeah, I would think they would probably not do that. Maybe they'll talk to these people and then they'll talk to the jury, like with Kevin leading it or something. But I don't know. I would rather see this and them talking about the season rather than see, times when people were farting throughout week 3 and week 4 in the montage at the end of the show.
Here's what I think the purpose of this is. They've really screwed up the editing this season, and I think that they are going to say, look at all these people that you've seen before and respect, and they're going to tell you how great Kayla is and that she's not actually a villain, and like fix all of our editing essentially by telling you what to think. I think that's probably the purpose of this.
All right,
I'm okay with it. Yeah.
At least they recognize that we might need to fix something.
And maybe that's giving them too much credit, to be honest. But we will see the winners on the finale. That will be interesting or the finale, right? Yeah, not tonight. We will see the eviction, the final 4 veto and eviction tonight on tonight's episode. We will, we'll briefly talk about that tomorrow when we talk about Kayla's game. But for the most part, we are saving all the finale coverage for after tomorrow night. The 2-hour finale is going to happen. We will be live after the finale to talk about everything that went down. Again, stay off of Twitter if you don't want to be spoiled. Let it come naturally to you. So once the episode ends, you can jump on Twitter, look at all the reactions, and then hop on the podcast and listen to us blather on about it. And yeah, that's it. That's it for the Big Brother Canada coverage. Depending on the outcome, we may end up doing a season recap later on, and we'll have some exit interviews from the final 3, hopefully, as well as maybe some retrospectives from some of the people in the game. But for the most part, that is going to be it for our Big Brother Canada 6 coverage.
Yes. So remember, we're going to talk about, not we, but you are going to talk about Kayla's game tomorrow with Matt Lagori on the Thursday morning show. Also, Starlet in the chat is saying the winners are on tonight's episode. The jury roundtable is on tomorrow. And she says, shaking my head, girl, what do you know? Well, we don't know everything. We're not Kreskin. We don't have all the answers. So apparently the winners are on tonight's show. The jury roundtable is for tomorrow.
Makes sense, but we still don't know who's hosting the jury roundtable.
That is correct. Yes, although there was rumors that Kevin Martin was in. Actually, it was probably for this. That's why he was there. So
I assumed it was going to be Kevin, but then it was.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
The winners are going to be there, and so maybe it still is Kevin. Maybe it's nobody. Maybe it's who knows. But we'll just have to find out. It's not that important ultimately. But very excited for all of it. Very excited to go over Kayla's game tomorrow. So far, telling the story of Derek's game and then Paris's game, there's, as you saw, like with most of the nominations, Paris didn't have a hand in it. With most of the evictions, Paris didn't have a hand in it. Same is mostly true of Derek. So when we go over Kayla's game tomorrow, we're finally going to get some more insight into why people were nominated and why they were evicted, because Kayla was much more involved in a lot of those decisions.
Did you plan that specifically? Did you say, did you think to yourself, Kayla's probably the one who had the most hand in various cookie jars, so let's do her last? Or was this just happenstance? It happened this way?
This was mostly according to schedule, but I also did try to get Kayla last.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to hear that one, because Kayla's game is the one that's the most. It's the most juicy. It's the most fun. And she's the one who's, I think, the sassiest of the final 3. So I just remember Kayla specifically smiling when people were fighting around her, not only when she was HOH but also when she was on the block and fighting for her life. She was smirking at people, or when she was fighting for her and Derek to stay off the block. So Kayla, it's been a slow burn, and then it's been really hot with me with Kayla. In the beginning I wasn't that into her, but then I started to really enjoy her, and then at the end I'm like, oh my god, you're great. So I'm hoping that you guys can do her justice tomorrow, and I'm sure you will.
I'm particularly interested in the contrast between Kayla's game and Derek's game, because Kayla, there is so much more to talk about. She was so much more involved in the minutia of what was going on in the game, while Derek mostly sat back and worked on his social connections. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of the jury vote as well. So lots of interesting stuff coming to you tomorrow, and the finale. Very excited for all of it. Lots of potential outcomes. Lots of fun to be had. So I hope you guys join us for all of that. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. I'm at Armstrong Taran. Brent is at One Lucky Gay. Check out the Twitch stream that I've been doing. Check out the other podcasts. I'm going to be recording Ninja versus Ninja with Lita as soon as we wrap this podcast up. Brent's got the RuPaul's Drag Race. And yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us this season. Thank you for sitting through these extra packed podcasts that we're doing towards the end of the season. I hope that you're enjoying it and that you're liking the monstrosity of information. We are doing our absolute best to give you as much information and coverage as possible. So heading into this finale.
Honestly, I'll just say it really quickly too, and I know I said it before, but I'll say it again. Thank you so much for being on it with me, Taran. I don't give you props enough, but that was really great. All the stuff that you did to remember, everything that was happening with Paris's game. Obviously, I'm a huge fan and I watch the feeds all the time, but like I don't remember all that stuff. I'm like, I can barely remember what happened yesterday in my life. So, Melissa's got a job and I'm over the hill. So thank God we have you here because you need a raise. That's what needs to happen. You need a raise. Rob needs to throw an extra microphone your way one time, and then we can be happy because you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I do my best. I do my best. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next time.